Go Figure TV. Revolutionary salute. Revolutionary salute. Like, share, subscribe. Welcome to the House of Revolution. You know I'm your humble host, the Yao Mean of Revolution. Was Epstein running the world? Epstein hands was in on everything. Before we get into that, be sure to wipe your feet. That means hit the like button. You in the House of Revolution. Like, share, subscribe, support the platform, y'all. We got to dig deeper into this because it seemed like the man was running the world, and the proof is in the pudding. Let's get into the content. This is very disturbing what we're going to be documenting tonight. Salute.
Epstein had his hands in so many shady operations and businesses around the world. And obviously, Jeffrey Epstein is heavily connected to Silicon Valley, tech. We saw Elon Musk begging to come to one of his parties. Brian Johnson, who previously claimed that, Epstein was creepy and he didn't ever want to meet with him.
Remember this. These are some of the most rich and powerful people in the world. Now we find out a sultan in Dubai. That's all Dubai. It's all over the news. He the one sent Epstein a torture video, an actual torture video that was unmasked today. More names dropped today. But why would a sultan in Dubai? Why would he need Epstein? He can do whatever he wants. Don't they want you to think what people got with Epstein because this is the only place you can just do the most sick, perverse stuff. That's not the only thing. It's way other dark, sadistic stuff was going on with this guy. But who is he? That's all going to be coming out over the next several months because he wasn't just no normal guy like they want, and he wasn't just no pervert like they want you to think. That is to throw you off.
The emails came out. Brian Johnson's like desperately trying to meet with him. So Epstein is a creep and is very connected to all these like terrible Silicon Valley tech people. But to me, there's something else that he did that is so disgusting and scary and terrifying. And I want to play a clip about this. So this news came out where basically Epstein described Africa as fertile ground for experimentation. He financed AI and other corrupt, inhumane research projects in Africa. So I want to watch this video from Whitney Webb explaining this.
Blockchain company called. There's a particular reference Epstein makes to Africa.
Let me just zoom in a little bit. Whitney Webb is so amazing. She's so brilliant. So yeah, let's just hear what she has to say here.
There's a particular reference Epstein makes to Africa, and he says, I do a lot of work in Africa, and he refers to Africa as fertile ground for experimentation. And so it turns out that Epstein was a major funder of this weird artificial intelligence lab being created in Ethiopia that's tied to this scientist who's overtly transhumanist that he funded extensively named Benjamin Goertzel. Goertzel is, for example, head of Humanity Plus, formerly the World Transhumanist Association, which is an entity that Epstein funded in addition to.
A lot of these AI things, these devilish dark AI programs, Epstein was behind them. Yep, using shell companies. You see a lot of stuff you wouldn't find his name on. He was using LLCs and all kind of stuff, but he absolutely had his hands in on some of the foundations of the AI that they're using right now. And this, they're talking about how he was helped build the program and research it, doing this research about it, how to control and manipulate in Africa. He was doing it.
to funding Goertzel's own work. And Goertzel is also the chief scientist at Hanson Robotics, which has produced these human-like robots, the best well-known probably being Sophia, the robot that was, for example, granted citizenship by Mohammed bin Salman at a time when one of his close advisors was Jeffrey Epstein. Again, very, very odd activity there. So as far as what was going on in Ethiopia at the time that Epstein was investing in this AI lab and backing Goertzel, Goertzel was teaming up with this blockchain company called Cardano that's pretty well known in the cryptocurrency space. And they were specifically seeking to offer digital ID. Well, it's already happened. They gave a digital ID essentially to 5 million Ethiopian school children with the intention of expanding that. And the whole intention of this is to harvest data from these children. They explicitly say that. So, and even in other documents, Goertzel essentially says that this data is being used to feed, the AI that powers robots like Sophia at Hanson Robotics and stuff.
I just want you guys to hear that last part again about the digital ID and the data harvesting on children. Like, listen, sorry to play it again, but like, listen to what she is saying. It's horrifying.
That Epstein was investing in this AI lab and backing Goertzel. Goertzel was teaming up with this blockchain company called Cardano that's pretty well known in the cryptocurrency space. And they were specifically seeking to offer digital ID. Well, it's already happened. They gave a digital ID essentially to 5 million Ethiopian school children with the intention of expanding that. And the whole intention of this is to harvest data from these children.
They gave digital ID to 5,000 Ethiopian school children to harvest their data.
No, 5 million Ethiopian children, man.
I mean,
they're probably 50 million.
It's just crazy. Like, I just think it's so bad. And I mean, I ended up like looking up some more of this coverage, and it's, so many people in Ethiopia, like, it's framed as this like positive thing. In fact, you see here, let me see if I can make this smaller. This is some coverage from.
Now you know why Bill Gates turned so devilish and got so dark. Well, I can guarantee you, where Bill Gates at with the dark bullshit he doing now, he didn't start off like that. Until these people got their hands on him. He just was a geek with some, with some understandings about computers. Till these people got their hands on his ass. And now everything he come with, they just using Bill Gates, but it's them behind it, poisoning all the food, poisoning the water. Now we're gonna show you him and Bill, the pandemic. Who would have ever thought Jeffrey Epstein was plotting the pandemic with Bill Gates? Now you look at, damn, what happened to? Yes, they wanted. Remember, they said too many people on this planet any goddamn way. But people pointing the finger at Bill Gates. He evil. He want to kill everybody. He is a compromised puppet. It's Epstein and his kind behind all of that shit. And that's just the truth.
An Ethiopian newspaper saying, Ethiopia to require digital ID for school registration integration expands. Ethiopia's digital ID system will be required for school registration starting next academic year. The move is part of a broader effort to integrate ID into public services under the government's digital transformation strategy. Obviously, we're all very against digital ID over here in the Free Speech Friday coalition. Like, it's appalling. It's terrifying. We should be against this stuff. But I think it's just, I don't know. To me, this was so horrifying what she said, because it just shows that, like, there are just these massive efforts to harvest a huge amount of data. And what is that data being used for? That data is being used to train AI, like Sophia, his like weird humanoid robot, who, by the way, I interviewed one time. Okay. Like, Sophia is this robot that wanted to destroy humanity. I mean, it was so stupid. I had to interview this thing at CBS CES. Let me see if I can find it. Sophia robot. This is like me debasing myself in my my like let's see, CES. I'm just trying to find the article that I wrote about it. Oh yeah, here's the article that I wrote about it. Because it could barely speak, by the way. This thing was like, yeah, the robot who wants to destroy humanity isn't so good at sentences. This is 2018. I wrote this because I went to CES this year, and it was so interesting at CES. This is again back in 2018. This is when like a lot of the transhumanist stuff was really starting to take hold. A couple years before, I had been to this like transhumanist festival thing in San Francisco, and CES is the big consumer electronics show in Las Vegas every year. It's every January. It's like all the biggest tech companies come and show off their new products. And they brought Sophia, the robot, to CES that year. And they offered a journalist to interview her. And of course, I was one of the journalists that got to like interview this AI robot, which really wasn't that good at the time and was saying weird things like it wanted to destroy humanity, but also like just like could barely like it was just saying a bunch of like weird stuff. And so I was like, okay, this is weird. And this is
If it was saying it wanted to destroy humanity, that's what it was programmed to do.
the story that I wrote about it, of course. But of course it also said a bunch of other weird stuff. Like again, I will destroy humans, just a bunch of other stuff that's not good. But again, these robots ultimately do improve. And I think part of how they improve these AI robots is through, sorry, my back is killing me. I have to like keep moving around, is through training data. How do they get that training data? Obviously, they get it from harvesting massive amounts of data. Obviously, also American data is valuable, but they can't get high quality, quote unquote, data from a lot of Western nations. So they turn to the third world to harvest data, right? So they're going to collect data on 5 million Ethiopian school children and use that data to train their models, use that data, for bad purposes. And somebody said, oh, sorry if this is derailing. Yes, I will do a tweet. Sorry, I didn't do the tweet. I'm sorry. I should tweet things out. I'm just really disorganized. I put it in my Patreon, but yes, I will tweet from now on. Sorry about that. But anyway, so back to the data harvesting of it all. It's just it's really dangerous and bleak. And Whitney Webb mentioned this guy, right, who Epstein was affiliated with and funded, called Ben Gertzel. I was actually pronouncing his. First of all, look at this disgusting man. This guy is up to no good. Not to judge somebody by their face, but well, anyway. So he basically, he's the one like leading the charge of a lot of this stuff. And this guy is very affiliated with the TESCREAL movement. If you haven't heard of TESCREAL, it's this new sort of basically blanket term to talk about a lot of the really dangerous types of like ideologies that are coming together in Silicon Valley. I just put a video about it on my channel recently. I'll pull up my video. I did an entire video on the TESCREAL movement, and basically they want to destroy the human race to give birth to super intelligent AI. That's literally what the TESCREAL people want. So that's bad, right? We don't want that. But yeah, here, let me just find the so here's on my main channel the video that I'm talking about. Probably heard about billionaires buying up luxury. It's this one. It's the tech billionaires want us dead. So if you want to know about the TESCREAL movement, that's the TESCREAL movement. This guy is very affiliated with that movement. It's like transhumanist. I can't remember what everything it stands for, but anyway, basically all these people just want to destroy humanity so that.
And all of them, all the tech billionaires who got in power had to go sit at the altar of Epstein, the demon, to get in power. Peter Thiel, now we know Elon Musk, all of them was sitting at his feet for some reason to get some funding and some other knowledge and some other understanding. Then they go off and do their devilish activities, Bill Gates, they just rubber stamping Bill Gates' name on all of this BS that's taking place the whole time. It's this sick guy and those who work for him. They just using Bill Gates' name. He like the evil doctor character. You know what I'm saying? It's on the movies. It's a dude somewhere on an island that's plotting the end of the world. That's Epstein. Trying to control the world. That's Epstein.
That they can give birth to super sentient AI. Not a very good vision of the future. And, you actually had this piece by this guy, Gil Duran, who's a phenomenal journalist covering Tuskral, and he interviews Emil Torres, who is another journalist kind of guy covering Tuskral, and they actually mention Ben Gertz here. He says, during the inauguration address that Trump recently gave with billionaires behind him, he used the term manifest destiny, this imperative to go out and colonize space. Musk stood up, leapt out of his chair, literally gave 2 thumbs up. Cosmism, which is also this idea that they have to kind of go colonize other planets with AI, was reintroduced by this name Ben Goertzel, who's the reason we talk about artificial intelligence. He popularized the term. He's basically a modern cosmonaut who says, why stop at re-engineering humanity? Why not re-engineer the universe, the universe itself? Let's think bigger than that. So, these people are just really bad. There's another guy that's affiliated with the Tuskral movement that wants to literally accelerate the heat death of the universe. I'm not kidding. He wants to accelerate the heat death of the universe because that's going to be better for AI. So these are the type of people that are pushing forward digital ID. They just want our data. They want our data to do bad things. And we need to fight back against it. And digital ID is, of course, how do they get digital ID? Not by telling people, hey guys, we want all your information to train our super intelligent AI. No, they push digital ID with this protect the children nonsense, or oh, we have to keep kids under the age of 13 off social media. So everybody needs to scan their biometric data, and we're going to conveniently use it. Yes, we're all also affiliated with evil AI companies. So it's just really scary and bad. And, I just think that we need to be very skeptical of all of this, all of this stuff. It's really dangerous. And the fact that Epstein was able to give digital ID to 5 million Ethiopian school children to harvest this data and train them, that's really bad.
Is going to change the way that you look at AI forever. It's not going to be pleasant to hear, but it's going to be very important. I intended on waiting until we hit 100,000 subscribers to release this episode because of the amount of research I did into it. I want to make sure that everybody has a chance to receive this and to completely understand it. I'll start with the fact that everything everybody's been talking about when it comes to the Epstein files is wrong, dead wrong. And the real issue with Epstein hasn't even bubbled to the surface yet. It's a much deeper, darker story. It starts in 2002, and it involves some of the most famous tech billionaires we have in our country today. Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, Larry Page. Now, I'm not one to bring you conspiracy theories. As you know, every single episode that I bring you here on Off Air is thoroughly researched and vetted and factual. That's the same with this episode. Everything I'm about to tell you is 100% absolutely true, and it's vetted, and it's unfortunate, and it is our new reality. If you spend your day on artificial intelligence, if you regularly log into ChatGPT, if you ask it questions and you receive answers and it tells you how to do your job on a daily basis, there is a very real chance, based on what I'm about to tell you during this episode, that technology is changing your life for the worse, not the better. I'm Ron Chapman, federal criminal defense attorney, former Marine Corps lawyer and investigator, and I'm going to bring you the story of the new eugenics Jeffrey Epstein, the godfather of artificial intelligence. There was a DARPA program. For those who don't know what DARPA is, it's the CIA-backed research.
Jeffrey Epstein is the godfather of these AI platforms that these people are using.
Wing that does a lot of research into technology, and it's been the godfather of many very famous technologies, including Facebook, as I'm about to show you right now. DARPA LifeLog was a program that was launched by DARPA. You can go online and look for the request for proposal. The design of this program was supposed to capture all Americans' information, put it into a LifeLog, track it, build it over time so that you can create an electronic database of every American, and in fact, almost everybody in the world. Well, when congressional hearings started related to LifeLog, it was quickly killed by DARPA. Why? Because it came to the surface, because people learned about it, and because people became very concerned about the impact of all of their information online. This was 2003. This was back when we were a little bit more concerned about what we put into the computer. We weren't too far away from dial-up modems and AOL, and Bill Gates was still a name that was regularly talked about. As soon as LifeLog became public, DARPA quickly killed it. And they killed it on February 4th, 2004. That date is significant because that's also the date that a young hoodie-clad Mark Zuckerberg, sitting in a Harvard dorm room, launched what he called then the Facebook. The Facebook was designed as just a Harvard campus project. That's all Mark Zuckerberg intended it to be. But then, of course, he met the Winklevoss brothers, two relatively wealthy and backed individuals who worked with him on the project. And if you believe the movies, Mark Zuckerberg went in a different direction than the Winklevoss twins. But that's not the real story. The real story is right after Facebook launched, it got tens of thousands of users. 50% of them were on Harvard campus, and it struggled to get off the ground in other campuses. It wasn't until a tech CEO, Peter Thiel, then of PayPal, and a relatively famous figure in the conservative party now today, came to Mark Zuckerberg, a relatively unknown individual on Harvard campus, and offered him $500,000. Now, the one thing that you should all understand about Peter Thiel is at that point, he was what's called an angel investor, but he was a different kind of angel investor. He actually paid individuals to drop out of college and commit themselves to his causes. Thiel's club has launched some of the most famous tech startups. He's been behind nearly every single one of them. Reid Hoffman with LinkedIn was started right around this time period. Now, if we go back and look at Peter Thiel and say, why did he spend $500,000 on this project? Why was he one of the first venture capitalists? Why was he offering this kind of money to people like Mark Zuckerberg? You have to understand about what he built at that point in time. You see, Peter Thiel was the founder of a program called Palantir. Palantir is the connector. Palantir is the brain, but the brain doesn't have the data that it needs in order to figure out artificial intelligence. Palantir is a company that takes existing information and it connects that information together to draw conclusions. It's been going for a very long time. I used it when I was in the Marine Corps in Afghanistan, and I've spoken widely about Palantir because of how much I know about it. But Palantir is nothing unless it has users to put in data. That's where LifeLog came into play. The intent was people like John Poindexter of DARPA, the CIA, and the US military, Department of Defense, felt that they would be able to just get a project to collect this information that was government funded. But when there was pushback by the American public, they had to go a different way. And DARPA playboy Peter Thiel decided to go the way of a young hoodie-clad college kid to get the information that he deeply sought to make the connections he needed in order to control so much about our environment. For those of you who think the rags to riches story of Mark Zuckerberg is some amazing tale that we should tell our grandchildren, think again. Just about every social media entrepreneur back in the day of Peter Thiel's tech startups was blessed by DARPA. Why didn't MySpace win over Facebook? It didn't have DARPA backing. Why did LinkedIn win over the dozens and dozens of programs that were available that did similar things around that time? It was because of Peter Thiel and DARPA. Why did Instagram become so big? Peter Thiel and DARPA. Spotify, Peter Thiel and DARPA. Just about every single aspect of your digital life, Peter Thiel and DARPA backed, blessing people in exchange for one thing: a backdoor of information to be collected from users, cell phone location, and a tremendous amount of user data. Now, what does this have to do with Jeffrey Epstein?
Before you scroll, there's a free ebook that breaks down a strategy built for retail traders who are tired of being.
That's the curious part. A lot of people aren't aware that Jeffrey Epstein is one of the first godfathers of artificial intelligence. Back in 2002, he had a conference where he supported some of the most famous names in artificial intelligence who were intending to solve a problem at that time. If you wanted a clean, reassuring origin story for modern artificial intelligence, you'd probably start with a university lab, a whiteboard, and a grad student surviving on ramen noodles. You'd not start with a private Caribbean island owned by Jeffrey Epstein. And yet, in the spring of 2002, a group of prominent computer scientists met with Epstein on his property for what was dubbed a common sense symposium. This was later documented in a 2003 AI magazine paper that thanked Epstein for his generous support. What were all these AI researchers gathering for? It was to solve a problem in AI. The topic itself was academically respectable: how to give machines the everyday common sense humans use consistently without even noticing. The venue for solving this problem was uniquely Epstein, and it's the kind of venue that institutional ethics would be very concerned about. The 2002 symposium, located in the Virgin Islands, founded by Jeffrey Epstein, was a gathering that was later described in print, one that brought together the most influential artificial intelligence figures, including Marvin Minsky, MIT's AI lab founder, Ken Ford, NASA, and DARPA ties. Their shared goal was technical: to solve the common sense problem, the gap between machines that can recognize patterns and machines that can reason like a normal human being about normal human things, like why you shouldn't store ice cream in the oven. This is very important because the common sense problem has always been a yeah, but of AI. It was never really addressed, but it failed many projects. Pattern recognition can be astonishing. Reasoning about the world like a person, that's where AI tends to trip up. And in order to solve the common sense problem, it's common sense that you need a lot of money. And that's where Jeffrey Epstein was very skilled. Some people, in fact, said that he collected scientists like some people might collect art. Why was he doing all of this? Well, it's because he had his own nefarious motives. So in 2002, the AI researchers gather, they talk, a paper is published that thanks Jeffrey Epstein for all of the support. And then the researchers scatter the globe and start working in their individual tech companies. And out springs Facebook, LinkedIn. The technology from PayPal spiraled across the globe and started collecting data for Peter Thiel and Jeffrey Epstein himself. But Jeffrey Epstein didn't stop there. According to MIT's commissioned investigation, Epstein donated roughly $850,000 to MIT between 2002 and 2017. After the Virgin Islands meeting, it was very important that this research gets done, and Jeffrey Epstein paid for it. But he paid a lot more to others. He even paid $750,000 to MIT after his 2008 conviction that everybody's well aware of. Now, the donations to MIT paled in comparison to what he purportedly gave to Harvard. Harvard had an investigation after it was found that they received such a large donation from Jeffrey Epstein, $6.5 million donated by Jeffrey Epstein, most of it in the hands of a researcher named Martin Novak. I'm going to talk a bit about Martin Novak because he's very important here. Martin Novak was the founder of the PED laboratory at Harvard. This was the laboratory that Jeffrey Epstein had a private office in. He had a swipe card and access to the entire building. And even after his conviction, he was able to visit many times, over 40 times. The PED laboratory was part of the Program for Evolutionary Dynamics. Now, you could hear the words evolutionary dynamics and think that this is a groundbreaking concept, but what it really is a dressed up version of eugenics. Martin Novak is originally a mathematician, and most of his research was based on the idea of cooperation, why some parts of the species might cooperate with others, even if it ultimately leads to their own demise. You see, people like Epstein and Novak were absolutely obsessed with the future of the human race and the problems of the human race that are caused by reverse Darwinism. The idea that as we become more technologically advanced, we as a people will begin to fail. And I think to some extent, we do see some of that evidence present, but they took it to an extreme extent. Investigations later described Epstein as being physically present, treated as a known quantity, and given institutional accommodations that go well beyond a pat on the back and thanks for your support, and look a lot more like integration into Harvard itself. With Jeffrey Epstein entrenched at PED and also at MIT, he had commanded respect in two of the most important institutions that were developing research in the area of AI and ultimately eugenics. MIT's media laboratory famously referred to Jeffrey Epstein as Voldemort, or the one who should not be named. They avoided saying his name because they knew who he was, they knew what he was about, but they just couldn't stop taking his money for research. The logic's almost poetic in its candor. If a donor's name must not be spoken, everyone already knows where the money is. If the plan is anonymous and not publicized, the institution's admitting it's not proud of where it's getting its donations. Epstein had positioned himself globally as a connector and certainly inside of the United States as a connector in many different institutions, but he was ultimately the funder of artificial intelligence and this sort of research. Starting in 2002 in the Virgin Islands, moving forward to large donations, he kept very firm relationships at MIT and Harvard, even after his convictions. But what's more troubling are some of the statements that Jeffrey Epstein would later make that reveal what he was really trying to develop with all of these donations. Now, before we get into that, I want to take a second. I would certainly appreciate it if you would consider subscribing and potentially becoming a member. I, along with Legacy Podcasting, put together this program for you, and it takes a lot of resources, and that subscribe means so much to me, and your membership does as well. Now, you might say, okay, Ron, what's the connection between Jeffrey Epstein, Facebook, and DARPA? And that's where a gentleman named John Poindexter comes into play. He's a former NASA director who led DARPA. He led the Information Awareness Office. He was actually the founder of the Information Awareness Program that I mentioned to you earlier. He founded the Total Information Awareness Initiative that was the program designed to get information on nearly every single American citizen. And of course, when that went out of favor, he had to find a way to get Americans to willingly give up the information themselves. And according to Wired's reporting, Poindexter met with Peter Thiel and Palantir co-founder Alex Karp in 2004 and told them that he had an interesting idea to apply data mining techniques from fraud detection to counter terrorism operations. Experts like Poindexter were really trying to solve post 9/11 problems, and that's where total information awareness came about. Of course, they had the benefit of a law passed by Congress at the time that George Bush was president and signed by President Bush, allowing almost complete access to the public's information and instilling FISA courts. At that point in time, the government was at the most powerful. The CIA, DARPA would be able to get as much information as they possibly could. And with the aid of Facebook, and fast forward over 20 years, CIA officials would tell you that the number one source of information on the American public are apps like Facebook, Spotify, and LinkedIn. Shortly after, we would learn that Reid Hoffman, the founder of LinkedIn, would sponsor a dinner in Palo Alto, placing Epstein at the table with Musk, Zuckerberg, and Thiel, all of which who would move forward and champion cryptocurrency as a tool for the future. They realize that the information is great, but the financial system is still tied to governments, and deleveraging the financial system from the government would allow this sort of technocrat explosion to occur and ultimately give them the power that they need. Now, great, you've got Bitcoin spiraling forward. You've got all of the information that you want on Americans. You have them willingly giving over their information, and you no longer need the total information awareness program. You're moving forward full steam ahead. Then a gentleman named Edward Snowden, who I once would have villainized, but now I might consider championing, came forward with information about a program called PRISM. I've done episodes before on the startup of PRISM and how that came from software that was stolen by the government around the time that Bill Clinton was in office, had the ability to connect information on all Americans and also collect information overseas. Edward Snowden was a whistleblower and told us how the CIA and the NSA would have the ability to collect information on every single American through all the digital devices that they had. That's where your information from Facebook was going. Now, there's a law that prevents America from spying on its own citizens. But when they give that information up willingly, all you need is a back door. That's one of the reasons why it was so important for Peter Thiel and John Poindexter to start these sorts of operations. That's another reason why Donald Trump pushed so hard, along with Joe Biden, in a unanimous effort to try to reduce TikTok in the United States. You see, if your government has control of Facebook, if your government has control of Google, and the Chinese don't have control of those, you're safe. But when a Chinese application starts to come into the United States and collect just as much information, that spells problems. In fact, I think what we did with TikTok is almost the greatest admission that your government is behind the information collection of Facebook and Google. And so, of course, Edward Snowden blows the whistle. We finally learn what PRISM is, and some of the information that we can gain from that is absolutely alarming. But that still wasn't a signal that it was used domestically. And we wouldn't find that out until the Cambridge Analytica scandal. I'm going to talk a bit about Cambridge Analytica, but I think it's important that we get to it in another episode as well. So make sure you hit like and subscribe on this one so that you can get notification of that. Also, in my last book, Truth and Persuasion, I wrote an entire chapter on the Cambridge Analytica scandal. And while I'm going to give you some new information and new research, it would be important to get some background in that book, Truth and Persuasion. It's essentially how the digital environment has changed us drastically. If you got a copy of the book or if you read it, let me know in the comments. Make sure you tag me in it, and I'd be happy to hear your thoughts about the book. The Cambridge Analytica scandal, for those who don't know, started well before it hit the United States. You see, Facebook and Peter Thiel connected a back door inside of Facebook software. That back door allowed certain other institutions and entities to get a hold of information. Cambridge Analytica paid Facebook a lot of money for a contract that allowed it to get not just the information on the individual user, but also get information on their friends and data that might have been already located inside of their phone. That meant that when you logged into Facebook, Facebook was storing not just your data, not just your user data, but also data from the friends that you'd connected with, whether or not they'd opted in on those privacy settings. Facebook settled a very large lawsuit with its users and immediately tightened up after the scandal. But the problem is not just that Facebook leaked the information, it's why. You see, as you know, Peter Thiel was early in on the founding of Facebook, and those back doors are very important, especially when they go to his friends. Now, most of you know that I'm a relatively conservative person, but I fight power wherever power is, especially if it gets corrupt, and I take issue with what happened here. So I hope you're a bit patient with me. Peter Thiel, a well-known conservative, but also somebody who believed that Brexit was a good thing, and also somebody who believed that Donald Trump should get in office in 2016. And while I will not say the Cambridge Analytica scandal was the result of Trump's presidency, what I will say is that it is the result of a database of information that very well can be used for bad. And it's very possible we may not have another free and fair election in our country's future. The founder of Cambridge Analytica was from a marketing firm, and he teamed up with a very smart programmer. They decided that they would try to influence some elections overseas, which was a great way to make a lot of investors a ton of money. They tried it in a few countries, Singapore and others, with some mixed results. They were refining it before they brought it into the UK and also to the United States. When they had almost 50,000 data points on every single American, enough to know just about everything about you, they decided to spring it loose to the highest bidder. What does that lead to? And what's the impact of that? Well, when Facebook knows a lot about you, Cambridge Analytica knows a lot about you, they know that they can split you off into a silo. If I drive down the street and I see a billboard, I feel one way about it. Another person may feel another way about it. If it's a lawyer billboard, I probably want to punch it in the face, being a lawyer myself. But these aren't billboards. These are little personal signs that can be individually consumed, which means if you look for the fear signals that somebody normally reacts to, if you put a bunch of different types of advertisements in front of them until you finally get them to react, you will know exactly how they react to a certain stimulus. I talk about this in my book, Truth and Persuasion, but there's two types of thinking, System 1 and System 2 thinking. And the first type of thinking is the sort of quick reaction sort of thinking that we don't even really think about. The second type of thinking is the type of thinking that is very intentional and logical. We sit down and we chart things out. You probably don't remember your drive to work very well because you were engaged in System 1 thinking. But if you sit down to solve a problem at work, you very well may be engaged in System 2 thinking. When we react to these fear signals on the internet, the Cambridge Analytica signals that get put in front of us, they appeal to our System 1 thinking, which means we aren't as conscious of what we are doing and the choices we're making. I've often said when I'm looking at a jury of 12 as a lawyer standing up in front of them arguing in a case, for the first time in history, these 12 people may have absolutely nothing in common with each other. They may be operating from very different algorithms. They may be basically speaking the same language. One person may be getting a whole bunch of Russian misinformation. Another person may very well be getting a lot of liberal misinformation. And another person may be getting some fear signals that are just completely out of left field. It's one of the reasons why at Thanksgiving, when you ask your uncle to pass the gravy, he might respond with something like, if you believe that the Charlie Kirk shooter did it, no. And he throws it in your face. That's because these algorithms are crazy and they're designed to silo individuals and get them to react to their own different fear signals to get them entrenched into a belief. This is one of the reasons why on my program I spend so much time being fair and balanced and showing you all of the information. I want my viewers who appeal to System 2 thinking. I want you to logically sit down and be critical and analyze this. I love it when people question me in the comments or even offer a correction if I get something wrong. This is a community that builds the right way, not based on fear signals. You won't see that from me. So if you want more of that, feel free to click subscribe. So Cambridge Analytica has a database. It knows how to operate on fear signals. It knows how to get people's attention, and it starts using advertisements to start swaying the way people think, the way people vote, the way people interact with each other. Now, this information finally became available to us because of a whistleblower, but if that hadn't happened, we wouldn't know that Cambridge Analytica was silently influencing most people in America in a way that prevents us from having control of our elections in the future. You might question that, but the reality is, a lot of us are powerless with strong appeals to System 1 thinking. That's not from me, that's from a researcher, Daniel Kahneman, who's been very prominent in the field, cited widely, developed these types of thinking, and he developed them directly from test cases in World War II. All right, so we've covered Cambridge Analytica, we've covered Facebook. Now it's important that we wrap all of this together by discussing Epstein's worldview and the worldview of many of his supporters, including potentially Peter Thiel himself. I think that we can sum this up the best way by discussing a breakfast gathering at Jeffrey Epstein's 50,000 square foot mansion. He was surrounded by former heads of state, executives from Google. He was in the presence of a former Israeli prime minister. When he was asked about Novak, about the Harvard research, he said something that was very curious. He informed this group of distinguished guests that Novak was doing research into cancer, but the way he explained it was very curious. He said, you know, when you want to find a suspected bad actor on the global stage, one of the things that you might want to do is collect all the information about them, the signals, the connections that they have with other people. He said that's the way that you would want to treat a cancer cell. And then one of the things that you want to do is you want to starve out that cell by destroying the connection. You see, in conversations with many high-ups, Jeffrey Epstein had repeatedly referred to this sort of eugenics in very odd ways. In many conversations, even with Novak himself, he referred to our species similar to the way that he would refer to biological organisms. And he would say things like, you know, dead organisms need to be washed away. Those that aren't useful to the body or useful to the system or are cancerous need to be wiped away. When he would talk about cancer, he was routinely not actually talking about cancer, but he was talking about those things that are harmful and no longer serve a purpose. Now, there's a lot of other things that you could say about Epstein. Certainly, he wasn't a very good guy. But one of the things that you should be very suspicious of is that he was the founder and, in fact, the influencer who originally started deep research into artificial intelligence. And this sort of mindset that he shared along with Novak, along with Peter Thiel, the idea that democracy is dead, that humans are heading in the wrong direction, that there's going to be this rise of artificial intelligence technology that will likely take over, starts to get him and other people somewhat concerned that the human race is not up for the challenge. And that's where dangerous thinking starts to come into play about tuning the human race in to something that might be sustainable, even if that isn't all of us.
There's too many people.
These were the same ideas that were shared by Nazis. These were some of the ideas that Adolf Hitler equated to Nietzsche's thinking that was essentially incorrect.
Now, that was a ploy. That was all a play they ran on the world. That was the small hats too. Don't fall for that BS. The Nazis, my ass. It's always been them.
It appeared that Jeffrey Epstein was really obsessed with the survival of the species. In fact, in an email between him and Ghislaine Maxwell, talking about another individual who I won't name, she said, wait, she's key. She has all of the DNA research. Jeffrey Epstein was obsessed with freezing his sperm, and one of the things that he wanted to do was be able to recreate himself later. He was also obsessed with the way that organisms interact with each other through Novak's research, and he was obsessed with the way that society interacts. He was working on some very deep projects along with very intelligent individuals who all shared the same.
This man would never kill himself. It would never allow them to kill or capture him. That's all a play. I don't know what happened, but that's all the play that ran on the world.
Eugenicist mindset. Now, that's a lot for one episode. And the next episode, I'm going to get a little bit deeper into Peter Thiel. I'm going to get into Edge, the secret group that is promoting all of this research. And I'm going to dig pretty deep into the mindset of some of these powerful people and why they think the way they think and why it is so incredibly dangerous. But one thing's for sure, your use of AI, your use of artificial intelligence, putting information into the machines that we've been putting information into was not designed to help us or save us or help us do our jobs. It was designed to give pieces of your freedom over so that it could be observed, manipulated, and fed back to you in a way that allows individuals like this to control. On the next episode of Off Air, we're going to talk a little bit more about
of the Epstein files is not only that Epstein was running a sex pedo trafficking ring in order to potentially blackmail powerful people into doing the bidding of probably Israel or even the United States. There's evidence that maybe he was even working for the CIA.
No, he didn't work for no CIA. He didn't work for Mossad. He wasn't just doing this. He was doing it for himself. He wanted to control everything, control Israel. He wanted to control the motherfucking world. And he was one of the most powerful people in the world. That's a fact. And all of them came to him and kissed his ass and kneeled before him. All the most powerful people in the world, except for Putin, except for Xi Jinping, except for Kim Jong-un, except the Iranian mullahs, except for Maduro, everybody else, except for the people who going at the West.
CIA, and maybe that's why the United States government is so adamant in covering up the crimes of Jeffrey Epstein. But one of the other interesting discoveries that have come out of the files is the fact that he was also a power broker for many. A new investigation has revealed that the Epstein files show Epstein, alongside powerful people like Bill Gates, may have masterminded the COVID pandemic years before the pandemic hit, that they were planning, preparing, they were in ways that would give them more control, more money, more.
They used Bill Gates. This was just a tech geek. Everybody wondered, how the hell did Bill Gates go from being a tech geek to he want to have his hands in on all kind of vaccines, all kind of what goes into our meat, all kind of what's sprayed in the air. That's not Bill Gates. He is a rubber stamp for the bullshit Jeffrey Epstein and his crew, the satanic small hats, been doing. That's just a fact, bro. People got to understand that. We all wonder, that Bill Gates is trying to kill us. Man, that man is a rubber stamp for them. And now you see Jeffrey Epstein and his people was behind COVID. And they just used Bill Gates. He's just a puppet, bro.
More authority with almost no accountability. That they would gain, they would be able to crush dissent. They would be able to utilize emergency power in a way that never went away. And that this wasn't done in order to prepare for, oh no, what if something happens? People may say, well, it's always good to prepare for, a disaster or something along those lines. But the new investigation and the Epstein files show that this wasn't about preparedness. This was about control. That it wasn't, we'll have these plans in place just in case. It was, we'll have these plans in place so that at the opportune moment, we can trigger them and gain all of this power and control over not only the American people, but the world. Joining us now is Sayer Ji. He is the author of Breaking: The Epstein Files Illuminate a 20-Year Architecture Behind Pandemics as a Business Model with Bill Gates at the Center of the Network. He is an author, a researcher. He's a health policy commentator and the founder of greenmedinfo.com, one of the most widely read independent health research platforms in the world. Sayer, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks so much for having me, Kim.
Your piece is long. I have to warn people. I definitely think everybody should go and try to read it. It does take time. It's detailed. This is not just some fly-by-night, slap it together investigative piece that you've done. It takes a solid hour to read this thing. And you've packed it with a lot of evidence that these power players potentially, I don't know if we'd go as far as to say they created COVID, but certainly utilized it in order to implement the level of pandemic that we were subject to. Would you say, how would you categorize it?
Well, it's a pretty shocking set of emails and revelations, because what we're seeing essentially is that there was an entirely new strategy for governance that was introduced through not sovereign nations, through democratic elected officials, but through a NGO structure that was also a charitable investment instrument that was architected by Bill Gates as well as Epstein, very intimately, actually. There's a number of emails that show that, in fact, it was Epstein that had actually orchestrated the entire model for what was going to be, according to Epstein's estimate, of something like $100 billion instrument, where they would essentially surveil countries, especially in the third world, like Pakistan, as well as regions that were known to have conflict.
Did y'all know it's also out that while Epstein was locked up for his pedo crimes, he won the Powerball? Yes. So that's rigged too. They run that. It's a fact. I'll play the video. You can look at it. Epstein won the Powerball while he was locked up. They just throwing it in our face that they do whatever they want.
Conflict, and they would basically create infrastructure that could surveil populations in anticipation of pandemics and other serious infectious diseases. And so this was one of the things that Epstein was orchestrating with JP Morgan, as well as some of the world's financial elite. And this was documented in the first, in the now 6-part series, where you have emails that show clearly that Epstein was directing the formation of what would become Project Molecule, which is basically JP Morgan's document laying out a collaboration with, the Gates Foundation, with Melinda and Bill as chairs, along with Warren Buffett and several others, to create what essentially was a permanent structure for deploying vaccines, financing them, and then essentially, once again, creating the equivalent of a militarized model of biosurveillance, which, as we've all lived through now, we know that the World Health Organization, United Nations, was basically creating a supranational biosecurity state that preempted all nations' sovereign constitutions, as well as the individuals within those nations.
Okay, so to understand this, they, well before the COVID pandemic actually hit, had put together, we're talking powerful financial institutions, financiers, JP Morgan, Bill Gates, alongside Epstein, that they had put together a plan that they would implement in the event of a pandemic. But the issue is that when you put these plans together and you see, wow, there's a lot of money to be made, and you start to realize as you stack this plan together, you're like, wow, we could make $100 billion. Suddenly that becomes incentive. That becomes motive for wanting to ensure something like this happens. Not just oh, we're such the good guys. If something were to happen, we've got a plan in place. We can do some disaster mitigation, right? That's not what this plan was. This plan was, how are we going to profit? And that then, when you see those numbers and you see numbers as large as $100 billion, you think, okay, how do we make sure this happens?
Well, exactly. In fact, some of the emails are very explicit, where Jeffrey is basically emailing Mary Erdos and others within the sort of financial elite category, specifically saying that Bill Gates is frustrated. We need to make sure that there's additional money for vaccines in this proposal. And keep in mind, the document released, Project Molecule, shows 18 versions of this being drafted in 2011. And from Epstein's actual email language, it's very translatable to the actual draft. It goes from an informal question answer with one of the JP Morgan executives. How are we going to structure this? With, of course, the Melinda Gates Foundation. And it's all about perpetuity, meaning this is going to outlive the founders. This is not just like a one-off investment scheme. This is a new governance system that is going to literally colonize certain nations and individuals with, again, vaccines. So it's a very specific model. And it even explicitly states that there should be an offshore arm for vaccines because it's a tax neutral jurisdiction and gives them probably less, oversight. And then, of course, very specifically, they want donor anonymity, which is why the donor advised fund structure is being innovated here so that you have, as many, large donors as you can get that don't have the obligation of transparency. They can pretty much fund or earmark projects and no one knows who they are.
So when did this begin? When did the email thread, from what you can dig up in the Epstein files, what year did they start planning this?
So 2011 is really the key year because that's where these, question and answer emails come up between Epstein as well as JP Morgan, where he's literally dictating to them rather informally what would be expressed very formally in Project Molecule. And so, this is also before the the email surfaced where, Jeffrey is apparently blackmailing Bill Gates, because in the email, it appears as if there's some STD and that, he's going to reveal this to Melinda. What's interesting about that, Kim, is that only 3 weeks after this, this is July, it's mid-July, and it's in August of 2013, when a contract is drafted, which gives Epstein broad immunity, negotiating on behalf of Bill to terminate Boris Nikolek, which is the scientific chief officer for Bill Gates. And it gives him such broad immunity that it appears as if, at least from my read, is that it appears as if it could be blackmail that was the motivation behind, Bill signing off all his rights to Epstein in that particular document.
So you're saying that Jeffrey Epstein found out that Bill Gates contracted an STD. He was going to reveal it to his wife, and he used that blackmail in order to gain more leverage in this, or to become the negotiator.
It's highly plausible because it doesn't make any sense that Bill Gates would give him all of those rights and indemnify him were it not for the fact that there were things going on outside of what he has publicly claimed, which is he's just had dinner with him a few times. Clearly, they were architecting an international vehicle for not only essentially financializing disasters in the form of pandemics, right? But also militarizing this to the point where they're basically laying claim to certain regions, which, by the way, the really big revelation here is 2014 and the Ebola outbreak in West Africa, which happens to be in a very resource-rich area. This was when the UN, right, literally had to announce an emergency, that this was a threat to peace in the world. And they deployed the military. The US deployed the military, declared emergency powers, and essentially took over that region. So this explains why the focus in Project Molecule is not, again, the public good. It doesn't really talk a lot about the welfare of those who would be subject to these interventions, right, and deployments. It's really more about biosurveillance and, again, a militarized model. And again, this is a private email interaction between Epstein as well as J.P. Morgan elite executives as well as Bill Gates, and they're basically architecting this for the world without anyone, looking over it.
When you first spot these emails, like, who is the initiator of this plan? Is it Epstein? Is it Bill Gates? Is it the financial class like J.P. Morgan? Who comes up with who's the mastermind?
Well, that's what's so amazing about these emails is that it looks as if it is actually Epstein. He's the one that is behind it. And his friend, Jess Staley from J.P. Morgan, is just basically following his instruction. So, and also Epstein is conveying Bill's frustration that this plan doesn't allow for enough capitalization of vaccines, because that appears to be his focus.
Wow. Okay, so they start this in 2011. Then there's Ebola that happens in 2014, and they're able to implement some of this, is what you're saying, with the Ebola outbreak in 2014.
It gets even wilder, because it was actually in 2014 that Epstein receives an email from Bill that makes it very clear that he's about to go visit Obama. Right now, at this time, of course, Epstein is a convicted sex offender. And of course, we know he was involved in human trafficking and other things. But the fact that Bill is informing him about his visit with the president, about Ebola specifically, and then within a matter of just a few weeks, the world experiences its first major event where the UN declares it's such an emergency that it's almost like a time of war. And that's when emergency powers are invoked as a sort of rehearsal for what we would see during the COVID-19 years.
So Bill Gates met with Obama and then reported back to Epstein his meeting.
Exactly. Yeah. And what's interesting is in the emails, and I do cover this in the series, Epstein is also consulted, by a former Israeli head of state visiting in a private event with Obama. And it's very clear this is private off the record, and that, he's being asked, who he thinks should be part of that. So Epstein is at the highest possible level of influence and being read into all what should be, even on a national security level, he should know about these things.
Who was this guy? It's just, I think for so long, many of us believed that Epstein was kind of the lackey. What I had thought up until this latest dump of files is that Epstein was kind of an asset of Mossad, that Ghislaine Maxwell was probably his handler.
That's a lie.
That she was also involved with Mossad. We know the connection with her father in Mossad. And so the thinking was that Ghislaine was kind of the handler, and that Jeffrey Epstein was just sort of this asset, this lackey that kind of they used because he had a certain proclivity that would allow them to. But it's looking more and more like, no, he was the mastermind, and that Mossad was working for him, that the CIA was working for him, that all of these entities were working for him somehow. Like he is. People were, oh, Epstein's too stupid, or Epstein's this. I was like, was he? I don't know. I don't think so. This latest batch of files just show a completely different Jeffrey Epstein than I think many of us thought.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, his relationship to Mandelson is the one that has literally toppled the UK government at this point. We found out just yesterday that Morgan McSweeney he resigned. He was, his chief of staff. He was also the founder of the Center for Countering Digital Hate. So there you have the
Prince Andrew. Today it came out. He was given, when he was the trade secretary for the UK, he was giving Jeffrey Epstein inside information to make money off of what the UK was going to do. So he's like, that's why Ro Khanna said it could bring down the British royal family. That's the blackmail that the FBI director said wasn't in there. Are you crazy? He was blackmailing and running every fucking thing. And most of the powerful men in the world, he had them in his clutches. It's just a fact.
The tie-in where what we're seeing in these files is that, not only is there this infrastructure being laid down to financialize, militarize, public health, there's also a enforcement arm that emerges in 2021 and 2, where they start trying to equate speech with violence, essentially, to the point where, DHS defines, dissenting from government narratives as a form of domestic terrorism. So this is part and parcel of what Epstein was involved in. And by the way, his communications with Prince Andrew, are the most concerning as well, because he's getting information that is essentially should be probably a state secret, but he's using that information along with what Mandelson fed him in real time in order to, make billions of dollars in theory because of the financial implications of some of that information.
I don't even know what to make of Jeffrey Epstein at this point anymore, except that this guy was like the devil himself. And that there's no way he's dead. That's just the one thing I keep coming to. The more and more stuff that has come out in these files, I just think this guy was too powerful. There's no way he's dead. That he definitely got himself out of that situation. And there's so many questions on that. But so basically they start this project. They're like, wow, there's a lot of money in here. We got to make sure we make all the money we possibly can, and we set this up correctly. They use Ebola as kind of a testing or starting point. Then they develop it even further, and then COVID. And suddenly we ended up with the chaos of COVID, which really, wasn't actually chaotic at all. It was quite, the people that had this already planned out seemed to know exactly what they were doing and guiding us all like sheep into the state that we were in, essentially. And do you think that, the big concern that many of us have is that they're going to do it again? And it seems like if there was this much money to be made, yes, of course, they're going to do it again.
Well, that's a great question. In fact, the other part we haven't even addressed, which directly answers your concern, is the fact that what happened was that in 2017, these discussions came up showing essentially that, there are these reinsurance products that were developed. Swiss Re is one of them. And what they're doing is they're insuring the insurers. So let's say if there's an act of God or war or pandemic, and even like those insuring events or travel start to get hit, there's an insurance product that ever covers the insurers themselves. And this is being laid out along with things like pandemic bonds the World Bank introduces, which also are a big problem because they essentially have very specific triggers, and they're called parametric triggers. So if there's this many people that are diagnosed or this many people that are dead, which we know through COVID-19 was a complete farce because of the inadequacies of PCR and false positives and the removal of requirement to even test for COVID for those who were pronounced dead, right? The national vital statistics requirements shifted. So you could have a motorcycle accident. They were still pronouncing people dead from COVID. Why was that? Why was there such a drive? Everyone was, starting to think, okay, this is just absolutely insane. Now we see why, because the financialization of this, creating an entirely new vertical of assets, which is, again, pandemic bonds and insurance policies that profit a certain group in order for, them to be paid out.
So lots of money, more systems being implemented. They're definitely going to do this again. I'm afraid of how they're going to do it. I don't know if the world will go along with another pandemic anytime soon. It would have to be, I think, something, but then again, Bill Gates wants to shove his vaccines into all of us. So it's got to be something a lot like that, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, that's the crazy thing about the fact that rhetorically, individuals like Bill Gates have been telling us, right? And how many people at the WEF that, it's not when, it's not if, it's when. They're constantly seeding this, that there will be another pandemic. Now, if we look back and we really understand, the origin of the patents that went into, COVID technology going back, 20 years. And then now we look at the other key pieces that were filled in with these email releases, is that there's just an institutional gravitational pull towards further pandemics, whether there's pseudo pandemics or not. The incentive is so great. In fact, the real issue, Kim, is that nation states no longer truly have sovereignty when you subscribe to a system that gives, centralized body. It could be Tedros, right? Who, when you think about Bill Gates' relationship with the WHO, right now, I believe he may even be the primary funder now that the US has left, right? Is that there's one individual that gets to determine, whether or not the whole world locks down in that model. The whole world gets forced to participate in deadly, mRNA technologies. And so that's the system that thankfully the US just pulled the plug on ostensibly. So I think with growing awareness, shows like this, because has this been even addressed in the mainstream media? I have not seen a single report of any of the topics, right? You have to go to X or you have to go to these shows to get the truth. That silence speaks volumes about how their entire system is now being revealed for what it is. And it's in the receipts. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is all just laid out historically with great clarity and all through legal disclosures. So this is all in the public domain now.
Well, I encourage everybody to read your piece. You said it's a 6-part series?
Yeah, since the original release, I haven't slept very much. But the thing about this situation is that when you see each email reveal another part of the submerged iceberg, now we have 6 parts. Actually, the 6th part will be released probably tomorrow. And it further reveals the UK's role in, like you had pointed out, it's not just his ties to the CIA or Mossad. It's really the UK Crown, and it's also the UK, foreign intelligence services, I believe, are most really just implicated in this network that he was at the center of. And that's why we're seeing the entire UK political system go through seismic changes right now.
It's on the beginning, little Queen.
The thing that's really the most disturbing about your investigative piece, which, by the way, this is, when I read this, I was like, this is like, do you know Whitney Webb? This is like Whitney Webb level investigating. I mean, this is fantastic stuff that you've been doing with this. but it really does show how screwed we are. And I don't, I hate to say it that way, but it's bad enough when we think the Epstein scandal, was a blackmail operation to gain leverage for like the state of Israel or something. But it's worse when you see, oh no, it was bigger than that. And it's controlling so many aspects. It wasn't just the control, blackmail is one aspect, one tool that can be used. And it seems like he was using so many different tools in order to really genuinely control the world. And this is why I just wonder, it's like, I'm not particularly a religious person, but I'm starting to think he's Satan himself, and he's like figured out
how. Promise you, that's what I'm trying. This is a demon, a possessed dark demon that comes through that ball Kabbalah stuff that those small hats have been practicing. Something has possessed that man. That man, he's mastered it. And those people, they practicing Satan worship and doing all kind of sacrifices. That the dark energy is real. It's all coming out. And the sexual stuff, the girls and all that, that's the PG stuff that all they can talk about. It's way more than that was going on. And now everybody know that. Way more than that was going on. And everybody damn near in power, besides the nations that they're going against, was wrapped up in it. Any nation that's in NATO, whatever you call the West, they all in them. All those Arab nations, they all in on it. Like I say, they just had to force to release that it's the UAE Sultan absolutely sent Jeffrey Epstein a torture video. So all that stuff in them emails is factual that they're talking about.
How to prey on all of the, like what are they called? The deadly sins, right? To prey on all of those deadly sins and that people, the desire for money, and there's lust and there's greed and all of these things. And it just seemed like he took control of each of those things and individuals. He pinpointed it, figured it out. Like, what is it that's going to motivate this person? And was able to wield influence and power over them and over entire industries. And when it's not just about foreign policy, but now we see it's about COVID pandemic.
So when you see how powerful he really was, it's no way he would have ever allowed himself to be captured by the U.S. government, to be locked up by the U.S. government, to be killed by the U.S. government. That's a play they're trying to run on somebody, not us, because they could care less what we think. It's a government, it's a nation, it's some people. They wanted to think Epstein was dead, but it's not about us. They could give a shit what we think, but there's no way. He's too powerful to have been captured. So it wouldn't have happened like that. That's all BS. That's scripted nonsense.
Pandemic policy and all of these other things, and then like you say, the mainstream media is not covering this. Why not? Well, because they're all implicated. A lot of politicians are not saying a word. Why not? Because they're all implicated. This isn't a left and right issue. When you realize everybody's implicated.
Right, everybody.
I don't know how we get out of this. I don't know how we
accept people, Venezuela, like Maduro, accept the Iranians, accept Putin, accept Xi Jinping, accept the North Koreans. Like I said, everybody who they're tied to, everybody in the West, Zelensky is tied. Epstein, and they're never going to talk about that. Epstein and Lady Rothschild was talking about all the money they can make off the Ukraine situation if the government would be overthrown. Then they overthrew the government. That's crazy. That's crazy that Epstein and the Rothschild lady was talking about what could happen with Ukraine if the government was overthrown. Then they overthrew the government. Epstein was talking about what they could do with the Libyan gold if Gaddafi was overthrown. Then Gaddafi was killed. Epstein was talking about they need to go in and overthrow the Syrian leader and trying to make a deal. They went after the Syrian leader. That's just a fact now. People understand that.
Rise up. Yes, we do what we can. You write your pieces. I do my show, right? We're trying the best that we can. But when it's like the mainstream is burying it because they're all in on it, this is just a different.
Well,
it's quite frightening.
I will say one thing that's encouraging is that I actually found that CNN had just gone over all of the emails that I released in this first part of the series, not attributing, but I was really impressed because that's the first time I saw an organization like CNN actually look factually at what are intrinsically damning, emails where it reveals the entire system. And again, in the US, we're not really seeing many implications in terms of political leadership, but in the UK, this is having such a profound effect. And by the way, they were behind many of the things that happened during, COVID-19 as declared, which include the Ferguson report with a way high case fatality rate, which was used to shut down the United States, and the Steele dossier. There's so many things from the side of the UK's control of the United States, and we're reclaiming a lot of that now. So I'm actually very encouraged. And I'll also say it is true that he in many ways looks like, the devil incarnate, but the other side of it is that he was just operating so smoothly within a system that required that he do these things, because black male and white male kind of rule the world. And this reveals it in such clear detail that I just don't think that it's going to happen anymore in this way. I think there's potentially too much risk, especially when it comes to, the international biosecurity model, which arguably pulling from the World Health Organization and, the 30 plus UN NGOs is a sign that we actually are kind of pulling back some of our sovereignty, I hope.
Well, we can hope. And yeah, you're right. I mean, props to the UK, I suppose, for at least being the only country where people have there's been consequences to the Epstein files. I mean, we've seen now 2 political leaders resign in the UK, and also Prince Andrew has had to basically step aside, with the royal duties and whatnot. I mean, there's been some consequences on that side of the pond, but on our side, there's been virtually zero consequences.
Ain't no consequences. Like Ro Connor said from California, getting your prince title took away from you ain't no goddamn consequences in the real world. That was a powerful statement. I was proud of him for saying that. Now, I'll let you the king and you the queen. That man went off today. No, you need to answer for what you and Epstein was doing. This is a fact. It's a move. The righteous tide is turning on these demonic forces. That's a fact. And it's gonna consume the US. Why was this queen in one of the Scandinavian countries talking about she wanted Jeffrey Epstein to impregnate her? Like, what? That's a big scandal over there. They don't want her to be the queen. Telling Epstein she wanted him to teach her son some things. And now this man just got arrested for all kind of sexual perverse things. Like, what the hell going on? Why is this lady the princess and soon to be the queen? But she wanted Epstein to impregnate her. That's in the files, bro.
Whatsoever. So
I see your point.
We'd like to see some of those consequences. Sayurji, thank you so much for being here, author, researcher. We do have the link to the first part of the series, of the 6-part series. Definitely encourage everybody to take a look at it. The Epstein Files illuminate a 20-year architecture behind pandemics as a business model with Bill Gates at the center of the network. The link to that piece.
Against capping your property taxes. But Watkins didn't even pay his own. Nathan Watkins, wrong for Texas.
You okay?
It's different, but you'll love it.
Now go save some money.
And she touched on a little bit of All right, y'all. Now, check this out, right? We had to react to this. A couple videos ago, y'all remember I had a clip from Candace Owens, and she touched on a little bit of what this video is about. But
very important.
This I haven't reacted to much because she's been, stuck on the Charlie Kirk thing since it happened. But
she finna talk about, and that was a big story. We're gonna have to touch on that too. About, it's evident, it's in the Epstein files too. They're talking about when the U.S. went into Iraq to go to the ancient site of Babylon to get to seize the body of Gilgamesh or Nimrod or Osiris, or what the I forgot what the Greek, but those are different names. But they absolutely, allegedly found this body. The U.S. first, the Germans found the site, then the U.S. went into Iraq, took over the site, and Hillary Clinton. They talking about this shit in email. This shit is real, bro. But the small hats, they wanted to get it because these people are trying to reverse engineer. They're trying to resurrect dark energy, dark magic. And people not paying attention, but it's all coming out, and it's absolutely all a part of the shit that Epstein was doing and his people.
This episode in particular, I think she dropped this one, may have been Wednesday. Very good episode. Immediately starts off talking about 23andMe. And what's the guy's name? Woody Allen, the old dude that's like 90 something years old. And the relationship that he had with Epstein. And the emails were about the 23andMe girls. Now, I've talked about this with people as far as submitting your DNA and, what's that website? Ancestry.com or something. Isn't it like that? That's another one. I've had these conversations with people, and it's something me myself I could never do. Obviously, you know what I'm saying? As no one's finna traffic me. I got a lot of artillery. But just very interesting how this is obviously linked back to Epstein as far as ways of trafficking. She also gets to going in about Gilgamesh tomb, the invasion of Iraq, the real reason. She has some clips from Rob Skiba, which I was surprised at that. Just overall, a very good episode. But let's react to some of this. I thought it was worth it. Check this out, y'all.
I need to find a Valentine's gift fast.
I just don't know what to do.
So I went to 1-800-Flowers.com.
Whoa!
Wow.
Seriously, wow.
Look at these flowers. Woo. These are gonna wow.
Happy Valentine's.
1-800-Flowers.com, guaranteed to wow.
Find the right care team, maintain a positive mindset, advocate for yourself, and ask your doctor about Nubeca.
There are so many directions that we could run into with the Epstein emails, but there's something that popped up that is very interesting to me. The 23andMe emails, the elites sending one another kits. Jeffrey Epstein, I'll show you two of them. First and foremost to Woody Allen. Woody Allen, that entire background story that Hollywood just accepts him is absolutely crazy to me. I'm glad that is being relitigated regarding what he did to his own child when she was 7. But allegedly, I'll say allegedly. But look at this email that Jeffrey Epstein authored to Woody. It says, the 23andMe kits arrived and will be delivered to Woody and Soon-Yi to their home today. So I don't know who this actually went to, but he was getting this kit out to Woody Allen. And there's another email, this time to, who is this? They're always blocking out the names, but it says, hi, Sultan, can you please tell me who James Miller is? He is who you have billed the 30 kits to. Also, do I understand the shipping address is Jeffrey's home at 9 East 71st Street? We're talking about 23andMe kits. Do you guys remember that trend, by the way? For some reason, they came out and they told everybody, this is going to be amazing. Don't you want to know where you're from? As if they don't know where we're from. They're the ones that are trafficking people all over the world. We can help you. Just send us your DNA. And a lot of people did it. A lot of my friends did it. I was already like, seems a little suspect. It's a bit suspicious. I'm not going to do it at all. Well, interestingly enough, that particular project, 23andMe, or that particular business, also began shortly following our invasion into Iraq.
Now, isn't that interesting? It began shortly after our invasion to Iraq. Very interesting. In the guise of sending in your DNA so we can know who you truly are. But obviously, I think it goes in with trafficking as well. 30 plus kits of 23andMe. It kind of reminds me of that whole Wayfair deal where, you know, they said it was a glitch and dressers were $17,000 and people was like, nah, these are little ones being trafficked.
I was going to say there was a conspiracy theory. And I don't know how conspiracy this was or how much of a theory it was, but they were saying that, you know, Epstein was involved heavily in the human trafficking to where Wayfair, there was, you know, some young girls missing throughout the past few decades where after a girl goes missing, Wayfair will technically have a furniture piece with the young girl's name at a listed price of, you know, $10,000, $12,000, $8,000, where the pieces of furniture were sold. There's receipts of that. A lot purchased by Jeffrey Epstein's assistant, as far as possibly tracking. And those same items that were listed, you could go back on there now and see them down for like, you know, regular price, $200, $300, to where they were using the internet and Wayfair as a way, which is a furniture company, as a way to sell, you know, humans. To see that, just give me your thoughts on possibly that level of execution when it comes to human trafficking.
I mean, the truth is when it comes to that business, because it is a business, it's a huge business, none of us are really prepared to have that conversation. I've sat here with y'all already and I've talked to y'all about girls getting moved around on tours and tour buses, girls getting moved around on video shoots. There's 80 trillion ways to sell a human being. The question is why is it so hard to believe that any of that stuff could be possible?
Why are y'all having so many kits of 23andMe DNA sample tests or whatever you want to call it? You know, were y'all using this for the ones who were trafficked? Or what was really going on? Or was that a disguise for 30 plus little ones is about to pull up to Jeffrey's crib? You know, I don't know. It's interesting. It's interesting. Check it out.
I'll tell you why this matters. Okay. So we invaded, as I mentioned yesterday, mid 2003, and we extracted Gilgamesh's tomb roughly 2 years later. Well, in 2005, the now bankrupt company, 23andMe, came together where people began sending in those DNA kits to figure out their ancestry. I want you to park that in your mind as we revisit our military's strange efforts in the Middle East. I mentioned to you guys this man named Rob Skiba yesterday. He wrote a book entitled Babylon Rising. This came to me from an email tip. It was immediately interesting. Well, this man, it is alleged, was actually murdered for some of the research and the pieces that he were putting together because he was perhaps getting too close to the ultimate project of the elites. By the way, his son emailed me yesterday thanking me for bringing up his father and grateful that his father's work is still carrying on. I've not had time to email him back, but I did receive that email and I know that you are watching. And I'm also grateful that the work that your father did is getting new meaning.
It's the perfect time to refresh your home and save big at the Living Spaces President's Day event. Shop designs that update and...
Anyway, I started watching the speech that his father, Rob Skiba, gave on the topic of his book, Babylon Rising. I explained to you that all of the elites are obsessed with Babylon, and any research that I do, it's all about Babylon, Babylon, Babylon. And I want to share to you some of these clips. It's Rob Skiba, and he's speaking about his book. Now, to tee this up, let's just get into a little bit of the history. He is positing a lot about the Tower of Babel. Obviously, we know this was built up, that this angered God. And Rob Skiba posits that it wasn't actually the height of the tower that was problematic. he believes that, or this is a theory. So don't be offended. Please don't send me emails about, whoa, this is not the teaching. This is not the doctrine. We're trying to not get to what is true or what you believe. We are trying to actually get to what the elites believe. Okay. We actually don't believe we should harm children. So if we're speaking about the elites' belief, you don't have to send me a lecture about what's wrong about it. The entire purpose of this podcast is to tell you that the elites are satanic. Anyway, back to Nimrod building this Tower of Babel. Well, Rob Skiba posits, he's like, I don't think it was because the tower was high. We know that he built this to get back to heaven. He thinks that actually this tower that was being built was a technology because they wanted to get back into the heavenly realm. Now, if you have read Gilgamesh, there is a lot of astrotheology that's in it. Stargates. We know that the elites worship stars. We've covered that extensively. Well, in this particular clip, you're going to see Rob Skiba discuss the Book of Enoch, the one that I mentioned to you, going back to the beginning, the story of fallen angels. And he brings up something that is of geographical interest. Take a listen.
Extra biblical texts, like the Book of Enoch and others, that go into more detail about what happened in Genesis 6. The Book of Enoch says that 200 fallen angels, a class of angels known as the Watchers, landed in this location right here. This is the center of a mountain range in southern Lebanon known as Mount Hermon. Now keep your eye right there as the camera pulls back and just kind of look at the outline of the topography right there. It's very interesting that it actually forms the shape of a goat. And one of the worst of the fallen angels was one by the name of Azazel. And Azazel is always associated with the goat. You see that in Leviticus chapter 16. The scapegoat is in reference to Azazel. I find it interesting that the land itself actually kind of looks like a goat head. This gentleman depicted here is David Flynn. He recently passed away, but he turned the world upside down with some of his research. And he was able to figure out that location is 33.3.
That is actually insane, y'all. Sorry for stopping it right there. We'll go back just a little bit. That is insane.
The land itself actually kind of looks like a goat head. This gentleman depicted here is David Flynn. He recently passed away, but he turned the world upside down with some of his research. And he was able to figure out that location is 33.33 degrees north by 33.33 degrees east from the Paris prime meridian. Very interesting. What's 1/3 of 100? 33.3333%, right? How interesting that the fallen angels that participated in what I call the Genesis 6 experiment landed on the geographical location that fits their number on the crosshairs of 33.33. Something else David Flynn pointed out is that if you put a little marker there, and you can do this for yourself, that what I showed you there was from Google Earth. I did it for myself to check it out. But you can put a marker there and then draw a line from there to the Paris prime meridian. We go by Greenwich today, but originally it was the Paris was kind of the standard for a long time there. And that is, in the occult, is referred to as the devil's line.
What is a fact is that the elites are obsessed with goat heads, Baal worship. None of this is a conspiracy. Jeffrey Epstein worked for the Rothschilds. You were looking at a picture of the Rothschilds at their surrealist ball. The more research you do, you just sort of see this appearance over and over again of goat heads. Even if you get into Pan worship, Dionysus, all of these, occult, orgiastic cults that they've had since the beginning of time, so to speak. And just to give you guys a biblical recap, I should never assume. I know a lot of people are.
Also makes you think about people being called the GOAT. Athletes who are called the GOAT. Now we may know where that idea or ideology really came from.
Now, a quick pause because I thought this would be worth it. Now, obviously, a lot of this stuff is for debate. I mean, you could go back historically with, people who consider themselves scholars and who research a lot of history, especially with the Bible. Nimrod, Tower of Babel, Gilgamesh and Nimrod being exactly the same person. Obviously, Nimrod being a post-flood figure of the Bible, right? A lot of scholars, a lot of people, I mean, if you go back to some ancient texts, which I had to do a good bit of reading just to even, make sure I wasn't confusing anything on this part of the video. A lot of people think they're exactly the same person, aka the first tyrant in the Bible, both builders of cities, if we're like describing them separately, both Mesopotamian figures, right? Because obviously it ties back to the beginning of the video where we were talking about 23andMe. We talked about a little bit of the trafficking, but more than likely the whole 23andMe thing, which they have lawsuits. I don't know if they're still current, but they have lawsuits about selling DNA. So obviously if 23andMe and Ancestry.com and all of that stuff was semi-started after we invaded Iraq, then obviously they were looking for the bloodline of Nimrod or the bloodline of Gilgamesh, Nimrod being the grandson of Noah in the Bible. So obviously they were looking for that special bloodline, or it was something to do with that Stargate.
The Colonel knew folks hated Mondays, so he made sure Tuesdays were finger-licking good with 8 pieces of juice
Portal that was supposedly found in Iraq. I mean, there's a couple of different theories on this topic. Some of y'all may be able to talk about it and educate others in the comments better than I can. But I thought this picture was insane because the guy, Nimrod, was literally 17 feet tall. I think I read that his shoulders were 5 feet. Like his width from shoulder to shoulder was 5 feet. Like, dude is gripping a full-grown lion, a male lion with a full mane. So we're talking about a guy who had complete control over everything. Big, giant, 17-foot tall, immortality chasing dude. I don't know what he's holding right here in this hand. I don't know if this is maybe some kind of serpent or something, but this is what he was depicted as. I mean, he's gripping a lion, y'all. A full-blown male lion. That is insane. But, you know,
Evolutionary salute. Evolutionary salute to Nature One Initiative. This your brother BLACK Money Town. Okay, family. Me and a few brothers in Texas wanted to start up for somewhere to find some local black kids, and I did that we can get clearance. I'm gonna put the email in the comment section. You can get at me, brother. But appreciate the donation to the war chest. Revolution is a way of life. I got you.
The theories are interesting because it goes back to the whole WikiLeaks thing and Hillary Clinton and the emails about finding Gilgamesh's tomb, or, maybe they're trying to find that DNA so they can, I got a clip for y'all where he's going to talk about it more, where they could create the ultimate weapon, which would have been Nimrod, aka Gilgamesh, or Gilgamesh, aka Nimrod, whichever way you want to put it. And I think Rob Skiba also talked about the Tower of Babel actually being technology and not like a physical structure. You know what I'm saying? The theories are very interesting, and I don't think we quite crack the code on why we actually invaded Iraq. It definitely wasn't for some oil and whatever the hell else they told us back then. This stuff sounds a little bit more believable. Very interesting, y'all. Let's get back into the video. And then I got this clip that goes into this stuff a little bit more. And he also shows that footage that was supposedly of Gilgamesh, like preserved in stasis and all that. I don't know if I believe that's actually him, because there's like gold cardboard inside of the tomb, and I don't think they would have had gold cardboard back then, but who knows? Anyways. Check this out.
Does anybody remember back in 2003 when the BBC reported on Gilgamesh's tomb being found? So there was this guy named Jorg Fassbinder who was doing LiDAR in the Mesopotamian area, and he said he found the tomb of Gilgamesh, which is Nimrod from the Bible. Babylon, Tower Babel, all that. So in the Epic of
Weird shit,
Gilgamesh,
bro.
it was said that he was
Same
17
mythological
feet
stuff they
tall
playing
and he
with.
was 2/3 God, 1/3 human, which would make his genome 66.6% Nephilim. Now I want you to imagine for a second the Nephilim, the giants, the mighty men of old, the lowercase g gods, and the children of the watchers. What if they could somehow rise back up and be reconstituted into a body? Now, my theory is, and what I'm going to explain to you, is that that could be a record of what is actually happening right now. Now, we're talking about Nimrod, who a lot of scholars identify as Gilgamesh of the Sumerian fame. He was also known as Apollo to the Greeks and Osiris to the Egyptians. He was a giant, and in late 2002, leading into 2003, his body was found. And I have the video I'm going to show you. It was found by Jorge Fassbinder under the Euphrates River. And in the Epic of Gilgamesh, it says he was buried under the Euphrates River. Okay, so guess when we invaded Iraq? 2000.
That body that's being shown, I don't believe that's King Gilgamesh. You see what I'm saying? Because I believe they would not have shown that. I believe that's part of the propaganda. I believe they do have it, but you got to understand they would never show you the body. They do have a body that's going around. They're showing you some fleshy white guy. That's propaganda. That's propaganda. That's just a fact. That's propaganda.
2003. Now, there was a special operations general who
Those findings
validated that they do have
real.
Gilgamesh's remains. His body is in a remarkable, crazy state of preservation. Okay, now, what if the whole point of invading Iraq was to extract his DNA? I'm telling you right now, the human genome.
Now, when they say they went in there about weapons of mass destruction, that's the truth. That's an actual fact, because what they will be able to do with and it's true. They can now bring back Willie Mammoth. They trying to bring back to life all kind of different stuff. They absolutely, if they get that DNA, they can bring it back.
Project's mission is to extract specific DNA markers to help reconstitute and reanimate old gods of old back into.
So you gotta understand, they going throughout the ancient world, digging into grave sites, getting DNA from those ancient people, hunting down bloodlines, killing them, doing all kind of nefarious shit. But with this mission, is way more to it. And these small hats, they're the ones trying to gain the supreme power. It's a bunch of power come with this stuff, and that's just a fact. People cannot overlook that.
The disembodied spirits to be reanimated into their host body. Something interesting is that 23andMe started their genetic testing enterprise very soon after the extraction of Gilgamesh's tomb. When we invaded Iraq, we were not looking for weapons of mass destruction. They were looking for the weapon of mass destruction, Gilgamesh. Now, you may think I'm crazy, and that's fine. Call me what you want, but I'm telling you right now, you're wrong. All these Epstein files coming out talking about cloning and people seeing two Epsteins in the same place at one time, them doing child sacrifice to gods to preserve their life longer. It's not that far out there to think this thing.
Now, I've been saying it since we started talking about all this stuff. Those files, this guy on the screen has brought up all kinds of, things you would call, or things normal people who don't get into this stuff would call conspiracies. The real reason we invaded Iraq. Those files are bringing back everything. This is not me just randomly doing the video. Obviously, I'm reacting to Candace Owens talking about it as well, but it's just crazy. A lot of this stuff is coming back to the forefront. And it goes to show you something like that will dig up a lot more. It will connect a lot more dots that you didn't really see in the first place. Or, no one would think that this Epstein stuff would have us talking about, Iraq and 23andMe. It's like, who would have made that connection? But it makes sense because it's all in those emails. And you'd have to ask yourself, why is this stuff in those emails? Why do they want us to see that? That's the connection. The connection comes from the kits of 23andMe, supposed kits that they were sending back and forth and talking about in the emails. And then it just brings up an entirely different topic. it's just crazy how this stuff has us, going back and looking at things that a lot of us probably haven't thought about in a while, and just unearthing stuff that, you know, most people don't even really know anything about. Very, very interesting.
Here's the set of the Ellen show. Does that look familiar? The blue and the white and the palm trees, the kind of the greenery and the white seats and the color scheme. Does it look familiar? Because it looks familiar to me. Yeah. Every single star has been on the Ellen show. And just so out of nowhere, Ellen's looking very, very old, huh? She's not looking too good. Looks like when you stop drinking that red juice, you start to die on the outside a little bit, huh?
Now, we have a few things to get into with the Epstein files. There's a lot going on, names being unredacted. We're finding out a lot more, some pretty sick stuff. But this is a video that was released recently by the Department of Justice. It is a deposition of Jeffrey Epstein, and he is asked point blank, when did he, what does it say? It says, how long have you been attracted to underage girls? We got to listen to this.
How long have you been sexually attracted to underage minor females?
Objection, harassing, argumentative.
Are you kidding? No, I mean, I don't feel like I'm divulging any secrets here, right?
Move to strike.
No, that's the question.
I'd like to answer that question as well, like all your other questions today. However, I have to follow my attorney's advice. They have told me that I must invoke my 5th, 6th, and 14th Amendment right to not answer those questions today or any questions relevant to this lawsuit.
What was the name of any of the underage minors that were the subject of the criminal charges to which you pled guilty?
I don't know.
So tell me about those charges. What was the allegations of those charges?
Form.
Solicitation of prostitution.
Okay.
Not underage prostitution, prostitution.
Were the victims or the prostitutes, as you would say, were they minors?
Form.
I pled guilty to solicitation of prostitution.
Okay, so tell me what those cases were about. What happened?
I have no more. I can't tell you any more than that.
You don't know what you pled guilty to?
I just told
I'm
you.
going to object to form. That's asked and answered.
Do you know what you pled guilty to? The facts.
Solicitation of prostitution.
I understand that's the charge. What were the underlying facts?
Sorry.
What'd you do? Did you pull up in a car, talk to the person? Did they come over to your house? How'd you get them? Those kind of things. Tell the jury what were the underlying facts about the charge that you pled guilty to?
Form. Move to strike.
I don't know.
You don't know what you pled guilty to?
I pled guilty to solicitation of prostitution. Oh, not underage prostitution, but prostitution.
And just so the jury understands, these 3 females that were the subject of the guilty pleas in state court were procured by your method of having underage minor females, locate other underage minor females, and bring them to your house. Isn't that correct?
Objection. Argumentative, compound, harassing, assumes facts not in evidence.
You'll have to
And I move
repeat.
to strike.
I have to repeat the question.
Okay. Are all people that were at the time you engaged in sexual activity with them were underage and were brought by other underage minor females? Is that true?
Same objections incorporated, as well as the motion to strike.
I don't understand. I'm sorry. I don't even understand the question.
Isn't it true that you used underage minor females to bring other underage minor females to your house for sex?
Asked and answered. Way earlier on.
Oh, well, he doesn't understand the question, so I'm going through the progression.
Not a problem.
But it is asked and answered.
As your firm, Mr. Edwards and Mr. Jaffe, have been described by the U.S. Attorney as perpetrating one of the largest frauds in South Florida's history by crafting malicious cases of a sexual nature against people like me and others in order to fleece, using bogus schemes, in the U.S. Attorney's words, investment schemes. Unfortunately, though, I'd like to answer every one of your questions, if I'm able. My attorneys have advised me I must assert my Sixth Amendment, 14th Amendment, and Fifth Amendment rights under the U.S. Constitution. Therefore, at the moment, I cannot answer that question.
Now, speaking about his first conviction, okay, understand, first of all, you see how he is. He's not answering questions. He's very confident. And we see what's going on now, the redactions, all of this that's going on. No one's really going to jail. No one's facing any consequences at all here. Like, you really believe that this man decided to delete himself because what? Because I want to take you back to this. On his first conviction, listen to this carefully. We already talked about him winning the Powerball, right? And it going to his trust. But the details,
he won the Powerball, y'all, and it went to his trust fund because he didn't want nobody to know. That's them money laundering money to him. That's them showing you they can rig the Powerball. How he won it while he was in jail.
Shows you we are working, like the entire government, everything is working to protect these pedophiles. So it says, did Jeffrey Epstein win the Oklahoma Powerball lottery July 2nd, 2008? There was also a computer malfunction that preempted the television broadcast of the Sunday draw. And instead, the drawing was held later and monitored by an auditing firm. Trusts shield the winner or winners from public scrutiny. We were hopeful that we could come in, but as time passed, we know they were going to form a trust, Finks said. Instead, the July 2nd ticket of $29.3 million was paid out to a mysterious financial planning company, Zorro Trust.
That's him.
Coincidentally, on July 1st, 2008, Epstein also started to serve his 18-month jail term in Florida as inmate number W35755. So understand what this is saying, right? Okay. Guys, he essentially was paid to go to jail, to take the fall, to take those years. And then we saw after this that he was working with Bill Gates, working with everyone. Everyone was working with him, going to his island. Just everything after that point, even though he was a convicted sex offender. And then I want you to say the odds of him winning that lottery the day, look at this. I want to say this again. Okay. So on July 2nd, the ticket was paid out for $29.3 million, and he started serving his sentence on July 1st. So when he showed up to jail, reported to jail, went to jail, right? Went to prison. Well, then the next day, he wins the Powerball and gets nearly $30 million into Zorro Trust, because Zorro Ranch is the ranch that he has in New Mexico. Do you see how disgusting this is and why all of this is a big show? The redactions and no one knows anything and then we need to move it along? Absolutely not. And it's not just prostitution. We are talking about not just, what he did to little girls, but also what they're doing with babies, the jerky meat, and which I found out yesterday that was his last girlfriend he had. The one that was telling everyone like the recipes and about his jerky and giving instructions to people as we read through his email. Well, that was his last girlfriend that he also put through dental school. And he left nearly everything that he had to this woman. Okay. And this is the one coordinating all of the jerky that he was eating and that he might start eating regular food again at some point. So these are Representatives Thomas Massey and Ro Khanna. And interesting enough, Thomas Massey, because it went viral when I posted I posted on X, I posted here on YouTube about the worst thing I found in the Epstein files, which was this girl or woman, I don't think it was a woman, it was a little girl, praying that Jesus will protect her, but then they say, whoops, essentially what we believe that she was killed. So Thomas Massey wanted to know from me what were those exact files so that he can look at that directly and find out whose name was redacted from it. Now, I don't know if he has that information yet, but take a listen to this little press conference they did trying to get these redacted names, and they said they're going to read them out. But believe it or not, I think I found what the DOJ has. We found out some of the names,
today.
but I think it was actually unredacted as well by the Department of Justice.
You know the type. Runs up the bill and slips out before it's paid. Like Nathan Watkins. Watkins wants to spend taxpayer dollars on liberal.
How much new information then did you see that was unredacted, or did it look pretty similar to what we've seen publicly?
I mean, what we're after is the men who Jeffrey Epstein trafficked women to. We want those names published. We're not out to embarrass people. And the problem is we went in there hoping to see that in 302 forms. What we found out is those 302 forms were redacted before they got to the DOJ. So, but our legislation directs the FBI, which is the agency that produced those 302 forms, to also produce these documents. The Attorney General is ultimately responsible for that production. So that's why we're here at the DOJ to view these files. But there needs to be more information given in those 302s. So I was disappointed we didn't find that. But it's also clear, just sort of as a checking their homework, that they need to do a little more homework. There are 6 men. We went in there for 2 hours. There's millions of files, right? And in a couple of hours, we found 6 men whose names have been redacted, who are implicated in the way that the files are presented. And finally, the documents that they put up and decided for one reason or another they had to take back down. I was hoping to see those here. They didn't appear to be in the database that we were able to search. For those ostensibly are wholly redacted files now. We know they exist. They published them for a brief period of time and pulled them back. They need to answer to us as to do they intend to redact those files and put them back up and put them in the database so that we can search them and see if it was appropriate to take them back down from the website.
Are these men U.S. citizens? What fields do they work in? Is it finance? Is it political?
At least one is a U.S. citizen. At least one is a foreigner. And the other 3 or 4 have names. I'm not sure if they're foreign or U.S.
And which field do they work in? Is it finance, banking, political?
One is pretty high up in a foreign government,
and some are there. One of the others is a pretty prominent individual. But I think that the point is that these 6 are just what we found in 2 hours of a review of the files that aren't redacted. The broader issue is why so many of the files they're getting are redacted in the first place. And until that becomes unredacted, the main things that they're sending to the career attorneys to review, I don't think we're going to have full compliance with the law, get to the question that most Americans want to know. Who were the rich and powerful people who went to this island? Did they rape underage girls? Did they know that underage girls were being paraded around? And after seeing this, I don't blame the U.S. attorneys, the assistant U.S. attorneys reviewing it. If they're reviewing redacted material, what are they supposed to do? But they're getting, it seems like, material that's already been redacted.
Okay, so we have that, but look at this. This is something else that Thomas Massey put out. It says, a sultan seems to have sent this. DOJ should make this public. So this is one of the things that I guess he has seen unredacted. And it specifically, it is someone writing to him and it says, I am in China. I will be in the US the second week of May. Then Epstein replies, where are you? Are you okay? I love the torture video. So that's what people were trying to get the name of who this is. And a lot of people think is Mohammed bin Salman, who is the crown prince of Saudi Arabia. I have done a video about him.
The crown prince of Saudi Arabia is the Sultan of the United Arab Emirates. We're going to get into that, but they released his name today.
Potentially being the Antichrist. Like, it is wild. He had 500 members of his family jailed. Like, he skipped the line of succession. It's wild. Even his own mother imprisoned. Like, the list goes on so that he could jump ahead and become the crown prince of Saudi Arabia. So this is what we're dealing with right now. Now, I have some more to show you guys, but if you want to support the work that I'm doing here, oftentimes videos are getting demonetized, getting hit, getting shadow banned. And one of the ways that you
names are dropping from the Epstein files. This is after Ro Khanna and Thomas Massie went and were able to look at the files for 2 hours. They were able to question the Department of Justice for why certain names were redacted when they should not have been redacted. Remember, the FBI and the DOJ were saying that they were just redacting victims' names, that they were trying to protect victims. And Thomas Massie and Ro Khanna said, yeah, that's bullshit. You guys are protecting perpetrators, and we're going to get to the bottom of it. So after 2 hours, they were able to discover from their search in that 2-hour window, just in a 2-hour window, after looking at, there's 3 million files, and I think they only looked at about 60 of the 3 million or something along those lines, not very many. And they were able to uncover the names of 6. And today, Ro Khanna named all 6. Last night, we got 2 of the names. We got Les Wexner. We also got the Sultan, Sultan Ahmed bin Sulayem. But today, Ro Khanna announced to Congress all 6 names. Let's watch.
Congressman Massey and I went to the Department of Justice to read the unredacted Epstein files. We spent about 2 hours there, and we learned that 70 to 80% of the files are still redacted. In fact, there were 6 wealthy, powerful men that the DOJ hid for no apparent reason. When Congressman Massey and I pointed this out to the Department of Justice, they acknowledged their mistake. And now they have revealed the identity of these 6 powerful men. These men are Salvatore Navora, Zorab Mikoladze, Leopig Leonor, Nicola Caputa, Sultan Ahmed bin Sulayem, CEO of Dubai Ports World, and billionaire businessman Leslie Wexner.
Okay, who are these men? First of all, Thomas Massie confirmed that the Sultan was the sender of the torture video. So Thomas Massie says, in response to my post on X today, this was yesterday, DOJ unredacted an FBI file that labels 2 individuals as co-conspirators, unredacted a file that lists several men who might be implicated, tactically omitted that Sultan Ahmed bin Sulayem was the sender of the torture video. What are we talking about? That is, this is the Sultan himself, and this is the torture email that he sent. Jeffrey Epstein emailed him asking, where are you? Are you okay? I loved the torture video. And the Sultan wrote back, I'm in China. I will be in the US second week of May, sent from his BlackBerry device. So this is the guy who was apparently torturing somebody in a video or sent a video of somebody being tortured, whether it was him or somebody else. He sent it to Epstein, and Epstein sat there and said he loved the torture video. Who is the Sultan Ahmed bin Sulayem? He was born in 1955 in Dubai, the United Arab Emirates. He is a prominent Emirati businessman. He is the group chairman and CEO of DP World, a global logistics and ports company operating in over 80 countries, and chairman of the Ports, Customs, and Free Zone Corporation. He played a key role in developing Dubai's infrastructure, including the Jebel Ali Free Zone, and holds a BS in economics from Temple University. Isn't that in the United States? So did he study here in the U.S.? Yeah, that is in Philadelphia. In the Epstein files, he's linked through the emails from 2015, where he discussed personal encounters, including one about the best sex I ever had. And Epstein referenced a torture video in correspondence. He continued emailing Epstein after Epstein's 2008 conviction for procuring a minor for prostitution. Bin Sulayem has a verified X account with over 17,000 followers, focusing on DP World and trade. Just going to go to his X account here in a second just to see if there's anything that's said. And no, the last time he posted was last October. So not that long ago, but I wonder if he's going to say anything now. And I actually don't even know what the laws are in the United Arab Emirates, and if torturing some girl or woman, even sleeping with minors, I don't know what their laws are. And that, I think, is important, because where did these encounters happen? I think that matters quite a bit on whether or not there's going to be any justice. But what I think it does show, obviously, is that Jeffrey Epstein, like we know, he was able to get to the top echelons of power. And these are all billionaires that are on this list. So we're not looking at the politicians just yet. And I think that's interesting. I think there's maybe even that's by design. You know, I think that there's still a lot of power players behind the scenes. I mean, Thomas Massey and Ro Khanna said that it's still 70 to 80% are redacted of the files. They're not supposed to be redacted, and they still are. Well, a lot of names are being protected, probably because they're still valuable. They're still useful, I should say. Is this guy useful for whatever the blackmail reason was that they had him in? Or maybe not. And a lot of times billionaires, it's not that they themselves are useful, it's who they know and who they could buy that's useful. So if you get a billionaire in your pocket, and that billionaire can fund whatever it is you want funded, or they can pressure, let's say, a politician because they have the means to support their campaign, then you get the politician just by getting the billionaire. You don't even have to get the politician. Both parties want you to believe they're working for the people, but let's be honest, Washington is bought and paid for. Big corporations in Wall Street get bailed out, while working Americans get left with higher prices, shrinking savings, and endless promises that never materialize. The system is corrupt, and when it breaks, they won't be the ones paying the price. We will. That's why I put my trust in something. Texans to fix a system they benefit. Now, he's been in the spotlight with the Epstein files for a while, because he was the one who really, when the Epstein saga started, really, when people started talking, they were like, who is this Epstein guy? How did he have all this power and this money? And nobody could really figure it out, except for that he was supposedly Les Wexner's financial advisor or financial manager of some kind. And so there was these clear ties between Epstein and Les Wexner, and people said, well, this is the guy that got him started. This is the guy who had him funded. This is the guy who helped Jeffrey Epstein become the multi-mega billionaire that he was. And it was all for Les. Now, Les was born September 8th, 1937 in Dayton, Ohio. He is an American billionaire businessman. He founded L Brands, formerly The Limited, in 1963, growing it into a retail empire, including Victoria's Secret, Bath and Body Works, and Abercrombie and Fitch. If you remember the scandal with Abercrombie and Fitch, where they were sexualizing young children in their ads. Peak annual sales over $12 billion. Wexner stepped down as CEO in 2020, sold a majority stake in Victoria's Secret for $525 million. His net worth is estimated at $9.1 billion. He went to Ohio State University and has received numerous honorary degrees. He's the chairman emeritus of Columbus Partnership, served on boards, including Ohio State's Wexner Medical Center. Okay. So long financial relationship with Epstein involved Epstein's managing his investments, leading to Wexner accusing Epstein of stealing hundreds of millions, settled with $100 million payment from Epstein in 2008. And in unredacted files, Wexner is labeled as a co-conspirator by the FBI. You know, one of the aspects of the scandal around Epstein was that one of the ways they tricked the young girls into doing what they wanted was that they promised them modeling careers. They found young girls that wanted to be models. They were young, and that was part of the ruse of how they could get these young girls. And if you remember Jean-Luc Brunel, who was a modeling agent, he owned an agency in Paris. He also was found suicided in jail just a couple of years ago. He was involved with the Epstein saga, and he owned a modeling agency. And Les Wexner owned Victoria's Secret, which for every model is like the creme de la creme to become a Victoria's Secret angel. So a lot of the thinking around all of this is that these young girls were told they would have modeling careers, but that they needed to, on the side, go to parties, go and entertain these wealthy men and politicians and do as they're told. And if they do as they're told, then their careers maybe would explode. In fact, in the files, I read this today, if you're familiar with the Hadid sisters, Bella and Gigi Hadid, there is an email thread in the Epstein files where Epstein is talking to somebody, and that somebody in the email chain is asking, how did these two women become big top models? And Epstein says, you know. And the person's like, what, their dad paid an agency? And Epstein was like, no. And Epstein basically said that they were willing to do anal sex, is basically what Jeffrey Epstein says in these emails. And that's how and then he says they did what they were told. And that's how they ended up these supermodels today. That's in the files. That's in the emails. I know it's grotesque, but that's what he said about them. Whether or not that's true, of course, I'm sure they would deny it. Right. And who knows, Jeffrey Epstein could just be saying stuff to say stuff in emails, things like that to disparage because he maybe doesn't like certain people. Who knows? I don't know. But that's what's in the files. And that is one of the clear ways that this scandal unfolded for a lot of these young women, was that they were promised things and then they were told to do and behave in a certain way. And if they did those things, then they would have opportunities that they had never dreamt about before. And Les Wexner, being the founder of being the owner of Victoria's Secret, would have a main role in that, I would think. Other people named in this, the other 4 names that have finally dropped, we do have Salvatore Nuara. He is a former NYPD detective. He was previously investigated in connection with an illegal escort service, which was not connected to Jeffrey Epstein. And so my understanding is that he left the force, he left the NYPD because he was investigated. He just was disciplined. I don't know if anything else happened, but he was investigated and ultimately disciplined for his connection to an escort service that was not directly, that we could see connected to Jeffrey Epstein. Zureb Mickeldays is one of the lesser known figures in this. He is potentially a Georgian, maybe a Georgian diplomat, and from Georgia, not Georgia the state, Georgia the country. So that's the thinking on him. Nicola Caputo is an Italian politician and producer. He was on flight logs. He is from Teverola, Italy. He's an Italian politician. He served as a member of the European Parliament from 2014 to 2019 for the Democratic Party, part of the Progressive Alliance of Socialists and Democrats, focusing on agriculture and rural development. Since 2021, he's been an alternate member of the European Committee of the Regions and holds a position as regional minister in Italy's Campania region, overseeing agricultural policies. So my guess is, is he still going to be part of the Italian political world after now his name has been revealed today? That is unclear. We'll find out. Another name is, are those all? So we got Salvatore, Zurab, the Georgian diplomat. We've got Nicola Caputo, the Italian politician, and also Leonid Leonov. This is a Russian pilot and businessman. Some speculation suggests a possible link to Russian figures, such as the late Soviet novelist Leonid Leonov, like maybe a family member, a prominent writer known for. So we don't really know. So I'm trying to get this information from Grok, to be honest with you, because we don't know who these are, and people are putting out information on X, and Grok is kind of sourcing it. But this is all we know really right now. So we don't really know a lot about. Let me see if I could find something else about this guy. Russian pilot, businessman, flew Epstein's plane's new flight details. That's what we know so far about this person. So the other 4 names, we're not getting a ton of information about. Well, I should say kind of disappointing, right? Because these are not the names we were wanting or expecting. We were wanting names that we all know. The Sultan and Lex Wexner are the biggest names on the list that we know. We were hoping to see some other bigger names. But again, this was only after 2 hours of them digging. Whoever's doing the protecting of these Epstein files is keeping those names redacted, and they're going to ensure that those names are last or erased entirely so that they never pop up. That would be my guess. Because look, if you're an intelligence operation like the CIA or Mossad or whoever was behind this, probably many different intelligence agencies were behind this, or at least benefiting from this, you're not going to just allow this information to go out there willy-nilly and suddenly you lose your power. No way. So of course, they're going to be holding on to as much dirt as they possibly can for as long as they can. So we're only going to get the non-useful names. I think that's important to remember. Everybody we're getting right now is just no longer useful. Even Prince Andrew isn't really useful. So, I mean, his own brother, the king, is right now saying, investigate him criminally. He's saying that about his own brother because his brother's inconsequential to anything. So right now, anybody who's being named, I think, is just somebody that is, just no longer useful to whatever it is. Now, the Epstein files last night, when lawmakers were able to go to see the unredacted files, which were still 70 to 80% redacted, a lot of these lawmakers walked out extremely disgusted by the whole thing. Lauren Boebert, this is what she said.
Congresswoman, are you among the members who got to see the unredacted files today?
Yes, I saw some of them, not all of them, obviously. I'll be going back tomorrow to see more.
Any reaction on what you've seen so far?
I think that there's folks who are definitely implicated and co-conspirators. And, I don't think everyone there that was talking about underage girls being trafficked are victims.
Got it. And do you support any clemency for Ghislaine Maxwell? She was saying that
I do not.
Okay.
I think Ghislaine Maxwell should get more time, and she should definitely be in a harsher prison than what she's in. It's absolutely disgusting.
Got it. Thank you, Congresswoman.
Representative Anna Paulina Luna said it has become very apparent that Jeffrey Epstein was grooming some of his victims to become traffickers. Some of the most horrifying emails being widely circulated are not from men, but from women who claim to be victims, hence some of the redactions. Once you turn 18, if you are still engaged in trafficking children, that is a choice. At that point, you're no longer a victim. You're a co-conspirator. To be clear, not all victims are guilty of this. However, it's a fact that some of them are. Yes, you heard that right. Some of the women claiming to be victims helped traffic children. Clearly, this is just the tip of the iceberg, but it's important to recognize the facts. Yeah. I mean, and it doesn't exonerate them just because they too were victims. It doesn't exonerate them from then becoming perpetrators. That happens all the time. I mean, most of the kids that were molested, when we get the molester was molested. Okay, that doesn't exonerate them from molesting another little kid. Because you were molested as a kid doesn't mean you get the right to molest another kid. We don't claim that that's okay. We don't think that that's okay. So it's important to remember that these women who were victimized and then they became the perpetrator. Yeah, you know what? You're a perpetrator now. This is Republican Senator Loomis, and she from Wyoming, Republican, and she changed her mind on the files, saying, I at one point thought, why are we caring about this? I don't care about it. And she says, now I've seen the files and I do care.
I've not been one of the members who has glommed onto this as an issue. I've sort of intentionally deferred to others to find out about it. But 9-year-old victims, that's...
All over the world, Moscow is saying too, it was sort of like a real global network that they're now getting to see on these 4 terminals they have outside.
Wow. Well, initially, my reaction to all this was, I don't care. I don't know what the big deal is. But now I see what the big deal is, and it was worth investigating. And the members of Congress that have been pushing this were not wrong. So that's really my only reaction.
I think a lot of people are going to feel the same way as Senator Loomis here. I think a lot of them are going to, when they actually see the files, they actually see the implications, they actually see that we're a nation living under a bunch of traitors, that a massive amount of treason was committed against the country at the behest of, blackmailers. Then I think a lot of them will start changing their mind the same way that Senator Loomis has changed her mind. Just want to play this as a reminder. Kash Patel had said under oath that there was no one else implicated. Wow, is he going to be in a whole world of trouble?
Who, if anyone, did Epstein traffic these young women to besides himself?
Himself. There is no credible information. None. If there were, I would bring the case yesterday that he trafficked to other individuals. And the information we have, again, is limited.
So the answer is no one?
For the information that we have.
In the files.
In the case file.
One thing Thomas Massey and Ro Khanna said yesterday when they were at a press conference after they had seen the files is they said that the DOJ, they didn't really blame the DOJ. They said the DOJ received everything was redacted by the FBI and delivered to the DOJ. So the DOJ just kind of looked through and they couldn't unredact things that were already redacted. So they were just looking through to redact the names of victims. I think there's maybe a bit more that the DOJ did there, but Thomas Massey and Ro Khanna were saying, yeah, but the DOJ received redacted files to begin with. And who's to blame for that? Well, that would be Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, the two guys who said they would give us the files. They were in charge of the FBI and they sent over redacted files to the DOJ. So then Pam Bondi has to take the fall when really it was Kash Patel and Dan Bongino. Liars. Flat out liars. Kash Patel just lied under oath, sitting there saying that the only person that Ghislaine Maxwell trafficked the girls to was Jeffrey Epstein, a bunch of bullshit. We all know that's a lie. Kash Patel has just ruined his career. So is Dan Bongino, by the way. I don't think anybody's really trusting them anymore. And rightfully so. You lie, you lie. Okay, let's see what Alan Dershowitz has to say about this, because he's essentially threatening to sue these women. The one of the reasons why a lot of victims don't come forward is because they're afraid of the consequences. And a powerful attorney like Alan Dershowitz, basically saying, this is criminal what these women are doing. They're naming it, they're implicating. Well, just watch what he has to say for yourself.
Before you look at this paper that has been reproduced and sent by the Justice Department, it's called Prominent Names. And it's a list of prominent people who have been accused. Every single name of every accuser has been blacked out. So, for example, let's turn to me. It says blank, 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 blacked out, stated she gave him a massage on Epstein's plane, parenthesis, not a minor. So let's understand that. This is an adult, a woman who was on Epstein's plane, she says. I was never on an Epstein plane with a young woman. Right. I never got a massage. This is total defamation, a total lie, but I can't disprove it because they won't give me her name. McCarthyism on the issue of his spying let me continue.
Let's get
on
to
the
that.
issue of his for the Mossad. That comes from what is called an undercover confidential source. I happen to know who the source is. The source is somebody who the FBI investigated, found to be totally incredible, lacked all credibility. This is the worst form of McCarthyism. Why are we tolerating this? Why are we allowing accusations without the names of the accusers? For example, in my case, it's an adult woman. We don't know whether she's a victim. We don't know whether she's a perpetrator. We don't know whether she's a co-conspirator. Why do you hide her name and produce the name of the people who are accused? That's guilt by accusation. That's guilt by association. It's McCarthyism. It's wrong. It's unconstitutional. It has to stop. And the media is playing a role in this. Politicians are playing a role in this. Epstein will never
Let
be
me jump in
remembered
for a second.
He will be remembered for inciting McCarthyism that infects America now more than it ever has since the 1950s. It has to stop.
He says he knows who the confidential informant is. He mentions Mossad. I just want to remind you that on my show, when I interviewed him and I asked him about working for the state of Israel, he said that he had worked for the state of Israel since before I was born. So he clearly has ties, connections. He's admitted it on my show. He's basically admitting it there, mentioning Mossad and knowing the confidential sources because he's part of the group and they tell him things or something. I don't, but he's basically calling for all of the names of all the victims to also be released. And he has threatened in a variety of other interviews as well to go after the victim, like to sue that they should be named so he could basically go after them. That's why a lot of people don't come forward, because they're afraid of the consequences. They're afraid of many different types of consequences, one being death, being, suicided or offed, another one just being ruined, or maybe family members harmed. People are afraid of powerful people, rightfully so. Lastly, I want to play for you this clip. Ro Khanna talking about, other countries actually investigating the perpetrators, going after them, and yet our country, we're doing absolutely nothing. Why is that?
We've heard the outcry now for years about the Epstein files, led principally by conservatives who wanted to get to the bottom of who was allegedly sexually assaulting underage girls. And so now we have the files, and you have all of these redactions of people who are not victims. They said it's taking so long because we want to protect the victims. But as you and others have said, these names that you've seen are not of victims being redacted. It's of rich and powerful men. So just point blank, why do you think they are protecting rich and powerful men? This is not about protecting the victims. What is your theory here?
They don't want to offend their friends. They don't want to offend their donors. They don't want to offend the reputations of powerful people, even though our bill, Thomas Massey and my bill, says that you can't consider reputation when disclosing. But here's what I find frustrating. You have the King of Britain saying that his own brother needs to be criminally investigated. In Norway, you have the princess saying that she's not going to be able to become the queen. Other countries are calling for investigations. Here we have a sitting cabinet member, Howard Lutnick, who's all over the files as having a business relationship, allegedly, and personal relationship, allegedly, after Epstein was already convicted. He has allegedly lied about his relationship, and there's no consequence. I mean, we have to get real in this country. Are we going to take action like every other country in the world is?
Probably not. That's the answer to that question. Probably not, unfortunately. Unless we really start to see more and more names and more implications, and we've got smoking gun evidence, I think we probably won't see anything. And the issue that what may happen is, if we do see anything, it'll be them just saying, well, you're a bunch of pedophiles, which of course they should go to jail for that if that's what they did. But there is a greater implication here that I think every American has been victimized by this, which is the blackmail operation and the control that they've had over our country because of the blackmail operation. So that is what should be at the forefront of every American's mind. This isn't just about powerful men abusing young kids, and we want to hold them accountable for that. This is powerful people, a ring, an intelligence operation that abuse an entire nation and really world of people. And all of the wars that have been waged, and kids who've been killed, and famines that have happened, and all of the various things that have been done because of these blackmail operations, that is the real crime. That is the bigger crime. That is the crime we cannot let go of if we're going to call ourselves a sovereign country. Certainly if we're going to call ourselves a democracy, if we're going to call ourselves a free people. We cannot tolerate any of this. But maybe we just end up, I guess feels like we're going to be forced to. I don't know what the alternative is, but we could keep trying, we could keep pushing, and we could certainly keep hoping. Thanks for watching this clip. So there's one revelation buried in the Epstein files that almost nobody is talking about. And it's not about underage girls, island parties, or foreign intelligence agencies. It's about a death that officially happened more than 30 years ago, a death that was ruled a suicide, a death that, if you listen closely, still doesn't make sense. And it starts with an email from Jeffrey Epstein. Now, in May of 2016, Epstein emails journalist Michael Wolff. They're talking about Donald Trump. Wolff wants help figuring out how to make Trump uncomfortable in an interview, how to get him to squirm. Epstein's advice is interesting. He says, butter Trump up first, relax him, then hit him with something personal, something sensitive. And then Epstein drops this. He says, Nussbaum White House counsel, Hillary doing naughties with Vince because people want. Now, it's cryptic, it's sloppy, almost joking, but the name in the middle is doing all the work, Vince Foster. Now, Epstein goes further. He suggests Wolff ask Trump why Bernie Nussbaum, Bill Clinton's White House counsel, got Vince Foster's letter so quickly. That's a Hillary problem, Epstein writes. Not a Bill problem, a Hillary problem. Now, keep this in mind. Vince Foster wasn't some random staffer. He was the number 2 lawyer in the Clinton White House. And in July of 1993, just months into Bill Clinton's presidency, Vince Foster was found dead. Now, officially, he killed himself. Michael Wolff responds to Epstein asking for the quick version. What's this about? Why does this matter? And Epstein replies again, Nussbaum White House counsel, Hillary doing naughties with Vince. Now, according to Epstein, Hillary Clinton was having an affair with Vince Foster. Now, to be clear, Vince Foster's death was investigated again and again and again. Every investigation concluded the same exact thing. No crime, no foul play, nothing to see here. Just a depressed man who took his own life. And officially, Hillary Clinton and Vince Foster were just friends. But here's the thing. The theory that the Clintons were involved in Vince Foster's death has always gone hand in hand with the theory that Hillary Clinton was having an affair with him. And suddenly in 2016, Jeffrey Epstein is casually referencing both. Now that matters because if there was anyone in a position to know powerful people's secrets, it was Epstein. Now, by the time Vince Foster died, Epstein had already been inside the Clinton White House. Epstein visited the White House at least 17 times. Bill Clinton flew on Epstein's private jet 26 or 27 times, depending on which record you believe. There's Bill Clinton with Ghislaine Maxwell. This wasn't a distant social circle. This was proximity. So who was Vince Foster really, and why have so many people for decades believed that his death wasn't a suicide? The modern conspiracy really begins with the documentary called The Clinton Chronicles, and it alleged that the Clintons were connected to a long list of mysterious deaths. One of the people behind that documentary was named Larry Nichols. Now, Larry Nichols didn't come out of nowhere. He worked for Bill Clinton, and when Clinton was governor of Arkansas, Nichols says that he was fired for allegedly working with the Contras in Nicaragua. Nichols claims the truth was the opposite, that Bill Clinton was the one connected to the Contras using Mena Airport in Arkansas to run guns and drugs. Nichols also accused Bill Clinton of multiple affairs and Hillary Clinton of having an affair with Vince Foster. These allegations didn't stay on the fringe. Even Rush Limbaugh publicly claimed that Vince Foster was killed inside an apartment owned by Hillary Clinton, and that the original Secret Service report said Foster's body was found inside his car, not in a park.
Vince Foster was murdered in an apartment owned by Hillary Clinton.
Okay, those claims would later show up in government archives even. And here's where it gets personal. Vince Foster wasn't just a colleague, he was Bill Clinton's childhood friend. They went to kindergarten together. Foster followed Clinton all the way to the White House as deputy White House counsel. But even before that, Foster helped Hillary Clinton get her job at the Rose Law Firm, where he was a partner. And at Rose Law Firm, Vince Foster handled documents connected to something called Whitewater. Now, Whitewater was a real estate venture involving Bill and Hillary Clinton and another couple, Susan and Jim McDougal. When Clinton went to the White House, the McDougals went to prison for fraud. That fraud ran through Madison Guaranty Savings and Loan, and the lawyer representing Madison Guaranty, well, Hillary Clinton. So once Bill Clinton became president, Vince Foster was tasked with investigating Whitewater, an investigation that directly involved Hillary Clinton, a glaring conflict of interest, if you ask me. Then came Travelgate. That was 7 White House employees fired suddenly. Vince Foster took blame in the press. The official story says that this pressure broke him, that this husband and father of 3 left the White House one afternoon, drove to a secluded park, and shot himself in the mouth. Case closed. Except, not really. The first Secret Service memo says Foster's body was discovered inside his car. Later, the story changed. Now he was on a slope in a park. A witness reported seeing a man in the parking lot giving a menacing stare. The man who first found Foster's body said there was no gun in his hand. Emergency responders noted little to no blood at the scene where a guy shot himself in the head. And investigators never found the bullet that killed him. What? So during the final investigation, an FBI special agent compiled a document titled Discrepancy List, and it was sent to Brett Kavanaugh, yes, that Brett Kavanaugh, who at the time worked on Ken Starr's investigation. The list includes no gunshot residue, no bullet, no blood on the weapon, an unidentified man at the scene, photographs missing, a gun that looked like a drop gun, a body laid out as if it was in a coffin, shoes with no soil. Also, they found carpet fibers on him instead of the soil that should have been there if he killed himself in a park. Now, investigators searched so thoroughly for a bullet that killed Vince Foster, they found bullets from the Civil War, but not the one they needed. So meanwhile, Foster's office was searched improperly. Items were moved, trash bags replaced. Bernie Nussbaum, the same man Epstein referenced, conducted an exclusive initial review of Foster's briefcase, and no suicide note was found. But then a week later, one magically appeared, all torn up. The FBI agents note that the torn note found 1 week later in briefcase previously searched by Nussbaum, the note had Nussbaum's palm print on it. And handwriting experts later concluded it was forged and written days or weeks before Foster's death. Documents related to Hillary Clinton's Whitewater work were moved to a safe in the Clinton residence and then disappeared. And when they resurfaced years later, while under subpoena, they had Hillary Clinton's and Vince Foster's fingerprints on them. So when Epstein joked in 2016 about why Bernie Nussbaum got Vince Foster's letter quickly, he was referencing the suicide note, or maybe he was referencing the documents, or both. Now, CNN later reported that Hillary Clinton was behind the 30-hour delay in turning over Foster's note to authorities. So here's where we land. There's no bullet, no blood, a suicide note that appears late, documents moved, then lost, a man who knew everything about Whitewater, a possible affair, and a cover-up that benefited the most powerful people in the country. Maybe Vince Foster knew too much. Maybe he was going to talk. Maybe it was Whitewater. Maybe it was something darker. Or maybe, just maybe, it really was the press pressure. But if it was scandal, it's an awfully convenient explanation for a presidency drowning. And when Jeffrey Epstein, of all people, casually brings it up decades later, that's when you have to ask, what did Vince Foster know and who needed him silenced? Now, there's one more detail about Vince Foster that rarely gets discussed, but it matters. In the aftermath of his death, it came out that Foster had been prescribed trazodone the day before he died. Now, trazodone is an antidepressant, and like many antidepressants, especially when first prescribed, it carries warnings about increased suicidal thoughts, particularly during the early stages of treatment. Now, here's the important part. Foster's autopsy reportedly found no trazodone in his system. So this isn't an argument that the drug caused his death. That's what people wanted to allude to, but he's conveniently prescribed this the day before, and then it's not found in his system. So what was that really all about? It does raise a much bigger question, and one that goes far beyond Vince Foster. For decades, when someone in power dies under mysterious circumstances, we're often told the same exact thing. They were depressed, and depression becomes the explanation that, that's what caused the suicide, and that ends the conversation. But depression is real, and the way we've treated it, especially historically, has often been crude, slow, and inadequate, which brings me to the sponsor for today's show, because the mental health landscape is quietly changing, and one of the companies at the forefront.
Kofi, follow me.